Hey guys, how's it going out there? So yeah, glad to be live with you today. Part of this is just kind of getting my live stream going again because see, like there's just little things like this. There you go. Straighten that out. Just straightening some things out, no big deal. Coming to you from my semi-messy office here today. Glad to be with you guys. Please shoot a comment if you can in the comment section. That would help me. As some of you guys may know, my computer died on me about 3 weeks ago and I had it replaced. It was about 5 days from going out of warranty, and I replaced it, and thankfully it was a MacBook, and that covered so I got a brand new MacBook Air, and that was awesome. And so, most of my stuff was restored, but what wasn't restored was all of my live stream settings. So I'm like, oh man, probably be smart to just do a live stream. People need to be updated anyway with what's going on with their ministry, what's going on with their live stuff. You notice I've had to miss some weeks here lately. Things are just so wild right now. It is so cool though. So first thing you can do to help, I notice there's a couple of viewers out there, and I'm going to get to the heart of what we're doing. If one of you guys, there's 3 viewers right now. There are 3 viewers, all of which I believe are on Facebook. We have 1 on YouTube, 4 viewers now. There'll be more come on in a minute. Okay, Kobe Kate says, sounds good to me. That's good. Good to hear. Because sometimes when I turn up this guy, it usually starts to echo or something like that, I think. And that was a problem I was having. I just want to make sure my sound is good. Here in a few minutes, we'll have my buddy Tyson James hop on here with us. He is the brains behind Sound Faith Consulting, and something you guys would probably have heard of in the apologetics world is he is the head of the Reasonable Faith Global Ministry. So it's William Lane Craig's ministry, and Tyson's a good friend of mine, and him and I talk global apologetics all the time. Later on, we're waiting on my buddy Aseka to put his kid to bed. he's in Nairobi, Kenya, and he said he would hop on and talk a little bit with us. And he's the head of the C.S. Lewis Institute, or he's done something with C.S. Lewis Institute in Kenya. I don't want to say he's like the head of it. I think he's the head of it though in Kenya, and he's going to be one of our future Ratio Christi guys in Kenya. He's really, really cool guy. If any of you global missionary people out there that are on my profiles want to hop on this live stream, just shoot me a WhatsApp, Facebook message, something like that. Today's just kind of a free-for-all. We don't really have a plan to this. It's just going to be a conversation. So thank you, Kobe, for letting me know that everything sounds good. So here's the update with what's going on with mine and Tab's ministry right now. It's really, really fun. So a couple of months ago, Corey Miller, the president of Ratio Christi, asked me to come on board as full-time as our future international director. Now, sorry, my throat is epic dry right now, and I'm not even nervous. It's just like I need something to drink, and it's all the way at the other side of the room. I may go there here in a minute. So what that means is all the Ratio Christi chapters that are planted overseas is going to go through me and Tab now, which is really cool. So what does that mean for Houston Christian University? That means I will be right at Houston Christian University doing this job. So we're not leaving Houston. We're not leaving our college post. We are looking forward to integrating our chapter as best as we can into the global directives. And so that'll be really cool. Our chapter at Houston Christian University is really cool because, if you guys don't know what Ratio Christi is, it stands for the Reason for Christ. And what we do is we as missionaries plug into chapters, to college chapters, to universities, and create these ministries called chapters. And the chapters are ran by students, and we teach students how to use apologetics to share their faith and go out and win the world to Jesus by sharing their faith using apologetics, being able to defend their faith, being able to talk charitably into the culture and change the culture, transform lives. It's a whole package deal. I love it, and we have so much fun doing it. And we've been doing that for the last, well, I guess we're coming up on 4 years now. We started this in COVID back in 2020. And I told my guys, the first semester I was an interim. And so in January of 2021, I told my guys that my goal for Ratio Christi at HCU was, even though we only had 4 people in our club at that time, they were like, what do you plan for us? I'm like, well, here's my vision. I would like to see our chapter be a global missionary sending group within, 2 or 3 years. So almost 3 years to the date, we started doing our own, we had our first mission trip overseas and got to work in a closed country and do some amazing things. And that was really cool as a chapter. And it was shortly thereafter that I was asked to take over this position as the director of Ratio Christi International. But right now, for this year, I'm under the leadership of our current director, which is Danny Lowe, very wise guy he'd been with Crew for several years, couple of decades or more, and Campus Crusade for Christ. He's done ministry in China and Japan and all these other crazy places. So right now I'm kind of in training under him, and then next May we're going to take this thing over and go for it. So yeah, that said, we do a lot of cool stuff and get to do a lot of talking to people online and doing a lot of Zoom calls, and I'm always talking to these really interesting people all over the world about apologetics. And I was like, man, we've got this YouTube channel, and normally we're working on interviews. Like, we've got an interview coming up. I'm working on this book right now, Jesus Contradicted by Mike Licona. I had Mike for 2 classes at HCU, some of the best classes I took here, and he was just such an awesome professor. We had such a good time. So we had this, ready for the logo to fly in? Let's 1, 2, 3. Bam. So we have this thing, the truth conversation, right? So I'm like, why don't we just start using the truth conversation as just this? Like, let's have some organic conversations that talk about global apologetics, and that would be, and not just global apologetics, but just apologetics in general. No big, like, we'll still do the more elaborate interviews with people, plan things out and stuff, but we're also going to try to do more of this kind of stuff, because we've had a lot of fun just jumping on here and having a conversation. So that said, I kind of wanted to bring you guys into my world, and this is exactly some of the stuff we get to do. Is I get to, hop off a plane yesterday. We just got back from vacation with the two people that are closest thing, the children that Tab and I have, Trevor and JC. We got to go on a free cruise. That was pretty amazing with them. It was paid for already. We just had to get there. So we flew into Charleston and flew back and had a 5-day vacation. It was wonderful. So I get off the plane. I had some questions about Patreon and things like that. And then I talked to Tyson for like an hour and a half. And it's just kind of the life that we get to live. So I was like, man, I'm just going to start doing this randomly and just have these conversations, because we always talk about everything. It's just a lot of fun. So let's do that. Let's see. I've never done this before. So let me get over here to interview. And this is so unprofessional, and I don't care. Like, hold on just a minute. And we're going to do this. And then I'm going to try to get Tyson on here. Can I do that? Oh, hold on just a minute, Tyson. I'm working on it, buddy. Working on it. Let's see. Oh, you know what it is? I got to go here. Oh, hey guys. How's it going? You're seeing my upshot. Tyson's going to kill me. This is so unprofessional. I love it. Guest 1. Are you guest 1 yet? No? Assign. Bam. Look at that. I'm learning how to use this program while I'm doing this podcast, obviously. It's been a couple of weeks since I've done this, but yeah. So, and then You should be ready to go. Can we hear you?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. The
All
question is,
right.
can the good people hear you out there? I can hear you just barely, though, and I think that's something on my side. Let me turn up my volume a little bit. All right, try it again.
Testing.
Yeah. Yeah,
Sound
for some
okay?
reason you're very quiet, but I'll figure it out. How's it going, Tyson?
It's going well, man. How are you?
I am doing fabulous. I am super loud and like you're super quiet, but well, I wonder if you're not just like, I wonder if the sound is correct. No, it's going to all the right places. So yeah, talk to me, Tyson. What's going on in your world, man?
Oh man. So I've got a 9-year-old daughter who just got braces on, so had to take her to an appointment this morning and get some wires fixed and figure out what the future looks like with those braces. Yeah. Did you ever have braces?
I did, believe it or not, I did have braces. But I lost my retainer about 3 months or about 3 weeks after I got my braces off. True story. My dad got mad about it and said, forget it. We're not even going to get another retainer. So I've kept my whole life. It's a true story. Yes, but I had braces for about 2 years when I was a kid. Did you ever have braces?
I still need braces. No, I've never had them. Yeah. I've got some majorly crooked teeth, so.
Wow. Yep. You're echoing, so I just checked our live stream. You're definitely echoing. All right. Now
It's echoing on the live stream?
Now I can't hear you. See? This is my problem. This is my issue.
Let me take out my microphone real quick.
So it's either echo or can't hear you.
All right, can you hear me now?
I'll get it figured out though. Let's see.
Can you hear me?
See, you're showing up on all the sound, but then I did an interview like this a couple of weeks ago, and like the whole interview was echoed. I'm like, I cannot understand what's going on here. Probably should have checked our settings before we went live, huh? Okay, I can hear some dinging and stuff over there. Try talking again.
All right. How about now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, but will it be like that on the chat? Let's see. Or on the... Let me bring it up to live. The only way I can check it really is just watch YouTube on my phone and take my... What it is this Zoom PodTrack P4 thing. So talk to me, Tyson. Just say something.
Oh.
Tell us your birthday.
My birthday is July 2nd of some unnamed year.
Here we go. Here's the test.
Tell us your birthday. My birthday is July 2nd of some unnamed year.
Okay, that sounded good. So try again. Say something else.
Well, it is June 5th, which means my birthday is less than a month away. So, just letting you know it's coming up.
I think you did something on your end that took the echo away.
Yeah, I switched over to a Bluetooth speaker. I had my lavalier in, and I took it out. So it may have been a setting that was messed up on my end.
We're about to find out right now. No, it's definitely on my end. Like there's a threshold, obviously, that causes echo. I can bring it up to about 4 on my volume knob, then it goes nuts.
Mm.
So that's wild. Good to know that, though. That's why you do things like this. Let's just randomly figure this out. Why not? So yeah. Anyway, so tell me what's going on. So you are we'll talk about Sound Faith Consulting here in a minute. Oh, and shout out to the Faithiest Atheist, one of our friends. He stalks all of us on Facebook. I'm just straight up about it. Like, the dude's everywhere. But
I don't know how he makes a living doing this. He must somehow, because there's no way he has enough time to hold down a job and do all the stalking that he does.
Yeah, well, feel free, Faithiest Atheist, to just get on here and just lambast us like you like to do. Like, he's such a mean person. There you go. There are two echoes, one about a half second behind and the other several seconds behind. That's so weird, man. Just wish you could figure all this stuff out.
Yeah, Richard, he made some post recently about eating babies.
You know what it could be?
You may want to ask him about that.
You know what it is? This is what it is. The sound needs to be going to my... Hold on a minute. Here we go. This should... I'm assuming this would fix this. Okay.
All right. How does it sound now?
Oh, you sound great now. And now, I'm not going to reveal his name because he's so secretive. Faithiest Atheist, let us know if you still hear that echo. And Tyson, talk real quick. Let me see if your volume's up here on the interview.
All right. How do I sound?
Sound great over here.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, but we can check on my YouTube thing on my phone. Yeah. So that's the hack right there.
All right. Well, let's roll.
So that's the hack right there. Okay. Cool beans. So I'm going to quit watching myself on a podcast and start talking to you. So now that we have all that troubleshooting done, that's the problem when you have all this technology set. And do you go through this, Tyson? Like, you interview people all the time. Like, whenever you have all this technology set, you almost forget how to work it. So when you set it back up, you know, you don't just click two buttons anymore. You have to go through this whole process again. And
where's my checklist?
Yeah,
put that
right.
checklist somewhere.
Yeah, I need to do one of those. That would be very, very smart. So let's talk about reasonable faith and what you've been doing there, because it's so impressive to me. It's so when I hear you talk about it, because you're so zealous for apologetics, reaching the lost, the Bible, loving people. Whatever the William Lane Craig and company's paying you, they're probably not paying you enough for all that you're doing. But if they're paying you anything at all, it often goes in some of this.
Oh yeah, I'm on the payroll, baby.
Nice. Well, I'm one of those that has to raise their own support, so I guess that means I'm more spiritual than you. I have to trust God more than you do. So no, it's not how it works at all. Not how it works at all. But it's it's pretty. So it's pretty cool. So you're doing kind of the same thing Ratio Christi's doing. Whenever you stepped into Reasonable Faith International, first of all, how long ago was that?
Okay, so I started as a local chapter director in 2013. I started a chapter in Monterey, California, while my wife and I were stationed out there. And then a few years later, in 2017, we got orders to move to North Carolina. And so I had to quit my jobs because we were moving, and we got to North Carolina, and I was just trying to figure out what to do for work. We had our daughter was very young at the time, so I was like, well, do I want to try and find a job that I can work at home, or do we want to put her in daycare and, I find another job outside the home? So we had just started that conversation, and then I got a phone call from Michael Lapine, the executive director, and he said, hey, our national chapters director is stepping down in 3 weeks, and he dropped your name as a suggested replacement. Do you want a job?
Wow.
And I thought about it for 2 seconds before I said yes. But no, actually I told him, I need to talk to my wife, but yeah, I'm pretty sure. And, I started telling my wife about it. She was like, wait a minute. So you've got a degree in Christian apologetics, and you have the opportunity to work from home and work for Dr. William Lane Craig, who is like your biggest, mentor from a distance. She's like, I think you have to take the job. I was like, yeah, I think so too. So I've been on staff as the Global Chapters Director since 2017, also the Director of
Okay.
Translations and Transcriptions.
Okay, I didn't realize you'd been on there that long. So you've been doing this since 2017. You said so, like almost a
Mm-hmm.
decade, man. 7 years. That's pretty cool, and that's so similar to my story. By the way, and we'll get to that in just a second. I want to. Here we go. We're going to add the broadcast. Where does this show up? There we go. See, there's another thing I needed to fix. I was waiting on that first comment. First comment on the new software, Faithiest Atheist. We had to set up a new. There we go. Also stationed in Monterey.
Yeah, Faithiest Atheist. Were you in Monterey at DLI or NPS, or why were you out there? I'd be interested to hear why you were stationed out there.
Yeah. While we're waiting on that comment to come in, it's just your story was so similar to mine. With this job with Ratio Christi International, because it was like the second they asked me, I knew it was like, yeah, God's prepared me my whole life for this. There's no doubt. But I was like, I need to talk to Tab about it and see what Tab has to say. And she said almost the same thing your wife said, Tyson. She was like, well, duh, that's exactly what you're made to do. Why wouldn't you do that? That just makes sense. So let's see if we got oh, here we go. He said,
Yes.
I was a counterterrorism. It was a counterterrorism academic program. So don't. In other words, he's an atheist you don't want to mess with. You better be very careful before you debate this guy.
Yeah, don't be a jerk.
Yeah.
Don't be a jerk. As Lindsay Meadenwalt says, don't be a jerk for Jesus.
Oh yeah. She's actually my next interview. Yeah, I just finished her book last night on an airplane. By the way.
Wait, when are you interviewing?
Next Wednesday.
Ha! I got her tomorrow.
It's not a competition, bro.
Okay. No, totally cool.
You have Mike Lacona yet? I've got him the Wednesday after that. No, just kidding.
He did send me his book. Where is that? Oh yeah, I've got my copy here.
Here you go. Let's
Yeah,
both
yeah,
draw.
there we
Look
go.
at that. There it is. Get this on Amazon, Logos, Kindle, and everywhere books are sold. Probably Barnes and Noble too. No. Yeah. Yeah. We ought to bring Faithiest Atheist in on this conversation too.
Yeah, man, shoot him a link. He should just hop on.
He should. He's such a cool guy. What you all don't know about the Faithiest Atheist, if you run in the conference circles, I call it, he he just shows up there and helps. Like he's kind of a bridge builder. It's really neat. And he's an atheist, but like he's friendly towards Christianity. He realizes its worth and value for culture and things like that. He's just not convinced that it's all true. And we always have a lot of great, fruitful conversations. And somehow I walk away like he's the only atheist I've ever talked to where I kind of walk away encouraged. It's strange relationship we have, but no, it's a good relationship. I wish more people out there were like him. Not just in the atheist circles, but Christian circles, Muslim circles. I mean, we need more people to have the conversation rather than just try to shout each other down. And so yeah, here you go. He's like part of the conversation. He's like Bill visits mosques and Hindu and Buddhist temples. So yeah, I should shoot him a link. Yeah, Richard, you want to hop on here? If you do, just send me a Facebook message. I'll shoot you a link over. We'll have to figure that out too as we go. I guess I don't know what all I need to do.
Yeah, it was so great. I met him in person for the first time down in Houston for the conference last month, and he really is just a super nice guy. And we had some really interesting, deep conversations about religion and politics and metaphysics, philosophy of religion. Yeah, it was just a pleasure getting to know him and hanging out. So yeah, you guys out there who are watching this, go follow the Faithiest Atheist channel on Facebook. The
Yeah,
Faithiest page.
yeah, he's yeah. You need more people like that. I mean, what I like about being friends with people like Richard is like he causes you to think, and it deepens your faith because you're not just in an echo chamber the whole time, you know, and and it's easy for us to do that. I mean, we're surrounded by global ministry all the time, and run with some very amazing people, very bright people. But yeah, at the same time, you know, you have to. Um, Sometimes, you know, it's one of the things. It's one of my joys is just to step out of that box and get into the culture and get around people that I do not agree with, and so yeah. Oh no, he said, "Oh no, I'm deepening your faith." I said, "Hey, you need to log on to, um, Richard. You need to log on to your regular Facebook profile. By the way, dude, like I just sent you a message on there. I don't know if I can send you one. Let's see. So here we go. Impromptu conversation with an atheist. It's a shame. Hold on just a minute. Here we go. Hold on. Business chat. Paste. Bam. Check your messages. Is it going to be fair if we just like team up on him though? And
He's used to it. He went through a counterterrorism academic program. We didn't, so I think the odds are in his favor actually.
That's fair. That's fair. That's fair. I ought to restart my intro and everything and just pop up with all three of us on there and be like, we're atheists. And what would you call your position, Tyson? You are the international director.
Global chapters director.
Global chapters director. So that's chapters outside of the USA, right?
Well, actually, so it just means all of the chapters that we have. So we have about 240 chapters in 39 different countries. Actually, 239 chapters in 39 different countries. And I supervise all of them. But we do also have like regional chapter directors. So because most of our chapters are in the U.S., we've broken up the U.S. into different regions. So we have regional chapter directors over those regions. We also have a regional chapter director to Latin America. That's my business partner, Raul. And then we also have, we just added a regional chapter director specifically for Brazil. So that's Leandro. So yeah, we're adding more chapter directors and regional chapter directors, and we're on 6 different continents. We just added a chapter in South Africa. We have some really cool places where we have chapters like Kathmandu, Nepal. One of the stories I like to tell is our chapter director there in Nepal. He decided to go visit a tribe, a nomadic tribe out in the northern mountainous regions of Nepal called the Rauta people. And I think there's only about 200 of them. But as far as we know, they've never been evangelized. And so he went out there and shared the gospel with them, just tried to get to know them, establish some relationships. And he said he had some great conversations and sent us some pictures of him wearing his Reasonable Faith logo polo shirt out there with the Rauta people. And I thought, how cool is that to see like the reach of the ministry in such far-flung areas among people who have never heard the gospel before. Like that's what it's all about. That's what gets me fired up. So I love that.
This is the most awkward 3-way. Sorry, I was listening to you, but let's make Richard really, really small, like right in between us. How about that? That's so funny. No, we'll try to do you right here, man. We're gonna put you inside our box. Is that okay?
Yes.
Totally doing this as I go. There we go. All right, let me fix your volume really quick. What's up, Richard?
Hey, how you doing? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
I've always said this, man. You sound just like Norm Macdonald. Anybody ever told you that?
I've never heard that, but I'm a big fan of Norm Macdonald's work.
Oh man. So I see your books back there. I didn't know atheists
Yes.
read things. So what are you reading?
um, I actually do have a lot of apologetics books, but most of these books behind me are with concerning my work, either about anthropology or psychology or neurology or biology, stuff like that.
Uh, what's your favorite subject to study?
I think neurology right now because they're learning so much about the brain, and I almost kind of want to change it to add biology because they're learning so much about cells too, and it's just like every year they're learning so much more stuff that it's bewildering. So I'm just enjoying trying to keep up with that stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy. So here's an admission. One of my favorite people to listen to about neurology is a neuroendocrinologist from USC named Robert Sapolsky, who I'm probably
Yes,
almost certain you're familiar with if you're into that
I,
stuff.
I am, especially about his stuff on free will
Oh
and
yeah,
determinism. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. He forced me to Picasso, buy a Picasso print of Guernica and hang it up in my kitchen. My wife almost killed me when it came in the mail, but I got a bunch of gift cards for Amazon for my birthday a few years ago, and I found that big print of it. The thing's like 5 feet long. It was pretty
Hmm.
cheap for what it was. But he talked about that horse in the middle of Guernica, and he was talking about how what that symbolized was um, Picasso was trying to be a voice for the voiceless victims of World War II, and how the victims were, these animals in barns that were burning alive and screaming and torturing, like in the last moments of their life, and they were. I wish I had a picture of it, but maybe you guys can visualize this. So right in the middle of the thing is this, Picasso, this abstract-looking horse that's kind of, you know, what is it? Not pointillist, but it's very. What's the modern art that Picasso used?
Cubism.
Cubism, yeah, cubism. It's very cubist looking. It's a very abstract looking horse, obviously. And he said, and as he was describing that, he just kind of, he said, you're doing something right now that apes literally cannot do, and that is have empathy for an abstract object in a war that you never participated in a different species that's not even your own. Like, it's just the human
That's
mind
right.
is so advanced we can't even wrap our mind around just that kind of empathy that you can have for something that happened almost 100 years ago now.
Right.
So that said, Guernica hangs in my kitchen, so when we have people over, I like to tell that story. So
Did I see
I
that? I was at your place last year. Was it there when I was there last year?
probably the big Picasso
Okay.
hanging in the kitchen.
It seems to ring a bell. I stayed there. Remember?
Yeah,
Uh,
you
so
did.
so it seems like yeah, something's ringing a bell. But it was a while back.
Yeah, yeah. I remember taking you around town to find protein shakes or something like that.
That's right. That's important.
I
The,
got
the basic necessities of life.
that's right. So very cool. So
What?
go ahead.
I was just going to say hello to Tyson. I got to hang out with him a few weeks ago. So
Yeah, what's up,
hello,
man?
Tyson.
Good to see
Not
you.
too much. Good to see you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you were talking about Guernica, and yeah, I remember studying that painting in my art appreciation class in college. Now that I have kids, I'm like, man, I should really put a print of that in each of the kids' rooms. You think that would be okay?
gosh.
That might freak them out.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot going on there. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot going. I didn't realize how much was going on in that painting until I got it, and I was yeah. There are mornings, where I'll just sit there and look at that thing while I'm eating breakfast. It's just like, gosh, there's so many things that you miss just glancing at it. And I'd love to see the original because I've heard the original's huge. I can't. Well, matter of fact, I mean, we're unprofessional right now. I'll Google it. We'll find out. The dimensions are humongous of that thing. Um,
Is
But
while you're doing that, Bill, is there a topic, Tyson? Are you guys meeting to do a topic, or is this just a random meetup?
how dare you expose us? No, it's we're trying to talk about global apologetics and stuff. It's so here you go.
I see.
It's 11 feet 5 inches by 25 feet 6 inches.
Wow.
It's like a room. It's like its own
Yeah,
wall.
it's enormous.
Yeah, I'd love to see the original. Um, so no, we're just talking about global apologetics and things like that. Like, be interested to hear what you think about that, Richard, because you have a unique set of skills. You're kind of like an, I guess, an atheist, Qui-Gon Jinn kind of guy. You have a unique skill set. If anybody gets that
That's
reference,
right.
that was deep nerd lore there. Now, let me let me ask you, like, what do you see as an atheist in like global apologetic trends and global worldview trends?
And I think I talked about this with Tyson. I think that a lot of people are going towards a sort of I believe in a higher power. So global apologetics is definitely growing, but I also think it's taken the edge off of Christianity, so that people are less likely to say that it's got to be about Jesus, that Jesus has to be part of a Trinity, that Jesus is the only way, that Jesus literally resurrected. I think some of that is dissolving, but then the idea that there's nothing, that's also dissolving. So I think it's all of it's kind of blending into there's something and it's amazing. And what does your amazing God do? Well, my amazing God does this. And I understand that's subjective, but I think that that's where things are headed right now. I don't know that it's going to take over, but I think that's where things are headed right now.
There's a couple of different things you said there. Like, what do you mean that like apologetics is taking the edge off of Christianity? In what way? You mean it's making it easier for people to convert, or making it like taking away the potency of the gospel?
Yeah, I think that it is helping convert people from nothingness into somethingness. But then it's also making people who maybe 10 years ago would have said, you need to literally, like for instance, Ken Ham was extremely popular 10 years ago. In fact, when he debated, most of the Christian people I knew just accepted Ken Ham as sort of the default Christian scholar. Now none of them do that. 10 years later, most people kind of roll their eyes at Ken Ham, and they realize he has some scientific background, but he's also just seems more like a fundamentalist who happens to also have put his scholarship behind it. So a lot of my Christian friends who thought he was the guy now just kind of say, "Oh yeah, that guy. He's kind of embarrassing." Now that they've been exposed to more like Hugh Ross and William Lane Craig, then Ken Ham just doesn't seem like the guy anymore. So I think that's good and bad, depending on how you look at it. But a lot of Christians are dropping some of their stringent rules for what you have to be to be a Christian, in favor of something that's a little bit more open-minded. And again, I don't know that that's always good, but I just see that happening.
Yeah, and Tyson, so you work for Reasonable Faith. I mean, is that pretty accurate diagnosis, you think?
Yes, I think especially for the West, Richard mentioned there's a growth in the idea that there is a higher power, not necessarily that it's Christianity. But what's interesting is, and I included this statistic in a talk I did a couple months ago at a conference here in Vegas. There's something like in the U.S. it used to be like over 90% of people were Christians. That's way down, but still like 80% of people believe in God or some higher power.
Yeah,
But what's interesting is the other 20% who do not, about 33 or what was it? Something like about half of them, maybe more than that, still believe, even though they consider themselves non-theists, they still believe in a higher power. So you've
yeah,
got you've got people who believe in God, but say they generally just believe in a higher power. And then you've got people who don't believe in God, but still believe in a higher power. So,
that's exactly.
especially and in the West, that is a
Mhm.
growing view. People are very reluctant to let go of that sort of transcendent, whatever you call it. Um,
Yes.
but yeah, I think, and Richard and I talked about this in Houston. I think while that is the case in the West, I think in other areas of the world like South America, Africa, um, parts of Asia, that's not the case. I think more people are trending towards things like Christianity or local religions or Islam and things like that. So those are the places where you find more difficult circumstances, living circumstances, right?
Right.
And
Yep.
it just seems to be the case throughout history that where there are difficult living circumstances, that's where ideologies like Christianity thrive. So that's why I think that those are the places where Christianity is still very strong and even continuing to increase in growth rather than decline.
Yeah.
Yep.
By the way,
I
before I
agree.
forget to mention it, Richard, you may want to angle your camera just a little bit to the right, buddy, just to get you like centered, because like half your face goes away sometimes. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. There we go. Perfect. Oh,
Okay.
It's really weird. I can't even see Richard on my end unless I log into Facebook and look at the live stream.
huh. That is
It's
weird.
probably for the best.
Yeah, I don't want to be too awestruck by your beauty.
Yeah, I don't. I wouldn't know what to do. Somebody else. I think I was talking to Holly Ordway a few weeks ago, and she was talking about she couldn't see me. Like what? She's like, it was like talking to you on a phone call. I'm like, I don't know. This program
That's all right.
Ecamm Live is so layered and stuff. It's like hack. It's like figuring out the Da Vinci Code every time you use it. I feel like until you get it down. But it's
Hey, Bill, speaking of global apologetics, I wanted to bring up something that's happening in China, which I think could happen here and maybe even other
China.
places. But one thing that happens in certain big cities in China is that you have to be speaking positively about the current government authority. Throughout the day, you can't just be like, "Hey, how are you?" You have to say something pleasant about the authority.
Oh,
And if you don't, people will go on their phones and say, "Hey, Bill didn't say enough. He said the usual greeting, but he didn't go on and on about how great the authority is." And that gets put on your profile. And then you go into the next store and you walk into the store and, there's like a little alarm that's like, this guy, might be good. He might not be. They're not hearing enough good stuff about the government authority.
hmm.
In which case, they might say, "Hey, we're busy right now. Talk to you later." But if you start ramping up your fervency for the authority, then they'll be like, "Okay, yeah, now come on, and we'll serve you." So it's almost like in order to survive, in order to get along, and this isn't everywhere in China, but certainly in a lot of big areas. You're controlled, you're monitored, and your phone and your identity kind of follows you, and your level of support. And I think that's going to play a big role in how these worldviews go forward.
That is an Orwellian nightmare right there.
Yep. And, I use China because it's actually happening, and that's not really a religion, but it's the same concept.
Yeah, it's. Yeah, that is interesting. Being very unprofessional. My wife is calling right now, so I'm send her a text. Hey dear,
Yeah, I think
I'm live.
I think what's really going to make an impact in places like that is a sort of guerrilla approach to apologetics, where a lot of content is coming from outside and bypassing
Yeah.
firewalls and things like that, and saying
Right.
things and introducing ideas that normal citizens can't say because, like you said, if they said it, it's going to be captured on their city monitoring systems, and it's going to hit their what do they call it, the uh,
Like
their
their
credit.
profile. Yeah. Yeah.
Say what?
Yeah. I was going to say profile and credit, but yeah, it's like your reputation. So how you're treated at a store, how the bank treats you, all that will be affected by
Social
how.
credit.
Yeah. All that's going to be judged by how well you passionately defend whatever the power is at the time.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah,
So
that's kind of why I'm really glad Reasonable Faith put down the money to get a lot of those animated videos that we did translated and completely redone into Mandarin. They're
okay,
fantastically well done videos about the arguments for the existence of God, the historicity of the resurrection, answering objections to Christianity, like the problem of evil, and then people are able to share those with Chinese Americans who will share those with people that they know on the mainland via, protected networks. So
right.
yeah, it's gonna take a lot of circumventing and finding ways to
Yeah.
smuggle that content to the country.
It's true. I was in Cuba a couple of months ago, and I went down there to talk to seminary and things like that, and do some humanitarian stuff. And it was interesting. The seminary president was talking about what it took to do like serious religious work, which is like get a religious visa and things like that in Cuba. And you have to go through a special program. They'll do a background check on you, all kinds of things. But it's interesting. I asked him if Apologetics had come to Cuba, and he said, "Yeah, absolutely. We teach out of a Reasonable Faith Spanish textbook in our seminary, William Lane Craig's text." And he mentioned another one too, and he had one of Nancy Pearcey's books on his shelf, Verdad Total, which is total truth. It's her Spanish. But he said, but the most popular apologist right now in Cuba, who would you guys guess it is? If you had to guess.
Mike Lacona.
Nope. You'd never guess
Who do you
it.
who do you think, Tyson?
I have no idea.
John Lennox.
I'll be darned.
I was like,
Wow.
why? He said, well, it's as simple
Wow.
as John Lennox puts Spanish subtitles in all of his videos. He has a Spanish like playlist or channel or something. I was like, it's that simple. Like that.
Yep.
And like he is very popular throughout the global South right now, Central and South America, global South. When you use the word global South, that's pretty much like 1040 window Africa, Central and South America. And yeah, and they were like, and I was like, man, it's just that easy. Are you serious? Or I'm sure you've seen this, Tyson. Our friend Ben Clifton is looking at this software right now. That's it's an AI software that basically translates as you're talking. I think translates it into whatever language you want it to throughout the world. It's amazing what kind of tech there is out there, and it even shapes your mouth to make it look like you're talking. It's
Yeah, Reasonable Faith, we've been using one of the programs, not the one that you're talking about, but it's a program that you train to have the same vocal signature as the person talking. And so we've actually been publishing videos of Dr. Craig speaking Spanish and Portuguese, and it sounds exactly like him because it has the same vocal signature. So it doesn't change his lips yet because we looked at that and it's like you can still kind of tell that it's AI generated, but it is getting better. So it'll get to the point where you can't even tell that it's not really him speaking Spanish or Portuguese or whatever language.
I tested it with one of my my Spanish speaking students. Our current Ratio Christi president at HCU is from Colombia, and I said, check this out. And it was Ben's video that like went into like 5 different languages or whatever. And he starts in Spanish and she's like, wow, his Spanish is so good. Who is this guy? And all this stuff. And then he starts speaking in Arabic. Then he starts speaking in German. And she's like, that's insane. It's like, that's AI. And she's like, that's kind of the AI I would support, I guess. Like that's or like Alex said here in the comments, like, she said it's cool AI tech. Like, I guess you can use AI for good things too. You can also use that same AI though to deep fake people and have people make it look like they're saying anything that you want them to say. So we have
exactly
to be,
right.
I'm sure that's already going on. I've seen it.
I probably shouldn't tell you this, but I'm going to share it anyway. So
keep in mind
one of our
guys
guys,
here, Tyson.
Yeah, we're live. So one of the guys on our team, a graphic designer, he was testing out some of these AIs, and he just wanted to see what it could do. And one of the first things he created was Dr. Craig doing a Rickroll. He was
Oh
he
wow.
was- yeah, never gonna give you up, and it was hilarious because it sounded exactly like him.
Oh
So
man.
yeah, that was the first thing he created.
I would
Uh,
pay. I
Cam,
would pay good money to see that. Actually.
Cameron Bertuzzi would pay everything. He'd sell his house for that.
I'll put it on the black market.
Yeah.
Let the
Shout
bidding war start.
shout out to Cameron if you're out there. We're watching you, buddy. So, so yeah, I was just talking to a guy from Chiang Mai, Thailand earlier today, and he was and we were talking about global issues, and I made a post about what brought the conversation on. Is I made a post about the Trinity on my page, and it's really shocking to see how many people are just so confused about the Trinity. There's people that are up in arms about, obviously, about the Trinity being a community, about the Trinity being, like nobody knows how to, seems like, get through the nuance of tritheism versus monergism versus, absolute monotheism versus essence, and all this other stuff. It's and it spurred this conversation with my buddy Jacob been a missionary in Chiang Mai, Thailand for probably a decade now or something, but speaks the language and everything. I'm really proud of him. He's doing a great job there, and I was talking about, it seems to me, now I could be wrong about this, but it seems to me that there are three things that every apologist needs to know that pretty much translates into every culture right now. And they're not necessarily like cultural issues, although I would put, if there was a fourth thing, I would definitely put like LGBT issues as the fourth thing. That seems to be just like a global conversation right now. And a lot of churches have never had to have that conversation before. They don't know how to approach it, and if they are approaching it, they don't know how to approach it charitably sometimes. So like there's a lot of that. But I'd say the three main things are the Trinity, the deity of Christ, and anthropology, or what does it mean to be human, and I would put the LGBT conversation underneath that third one, obviously. Like, what is that? Like, how does that come into there? But yeah, I don't know. I mean, would you think that's accurate in the conversations you all are having right now, or?
Let's hear from the
Um,
atheist.
yes. First of all, for anybody who went to my page, you'll see my most current post is a reel where I want to say lovingly, but you won't take it that way. Um, Pick at the idea of a Trinity, which I don't think makes sense. And so I have a little reel, and if you click on it, you'll see it's like me making a joke of a Christian trying to convince God that he's part of a Trinity. So
Shameless plug.
so people who go to my page are going to be like, I don't. You said this guy was great. He's not. I do pick on things that that I like to talk about. But another thing is, I've noticed that a lot of Christians just don't talk about it. There's some things about Christianity that people have just dropped, and the Trinity is one of them. That I think I can only think of maybe two Christians who will give me a detailed description of how they see the Trinity. Other Christians will be like, they're three and they're one, and it all works out. And what did you have for lunch today? Let's go have some coffee. So I don't see too many Christians worrying about that. It should be that way, but I don't know that it might be doing more about what I said, which is leaning more towards the higher power thing, and just kind of dropping whether the Trinity matters. That's just from what I'm seeing.
So, Richard, real quick, did you say that to you the Trinity doesn't make sense? Is that what you were
Right.
saying?
I think it doesn't make sense. And my best way to describe why I think it's a thing is that I think, uh, some very wise philosophers and theologians said it has to. So let's try. And it's just not, in my mind, they haven't found a way to make it work. And I don't know that it will. I mean, I've had people like Tim Stratton. I've spent the entire weekend with Tim Stratton, where he, talked about cognitive functions and gave me some metaphors, and and I've heard James White do a whole lecture on this. So I mean, I've heard a lot of stuff, but I don't think it could work.
I just love how you said
So,
that. We talked about cognitive functions. He gave me some metaphors. I don't know. It was a cool weekend, I guess.
Yeah, it was a great weekend. But
Typical weekend with Tim Stratton.
yeah,
That's Tim.
but it's like I mentioned before. Tyson and I had another conversation where I was mentioning an apologist that I think is loyal to a verse being good, even if the verse wasn't maybe designed to be good, but the apologist is, and so he tries to make it work. I think the Trinity is another example where sometimes Christians try to make something work that doesn't. And again, I'm a non-believer, so of course I'm going to say things like this, but that's just how I'm looking at it.
How dare you come on my podcast and say something like this?
So would you go so far as to say that the doctrine of the Trinity is logically incoherent, or you just haven't seen a model that makes sense to you?
Right, I haven't seen a model that makes sense. I keep thinking that, well, first of all, if you really want to tear into what I believe, I think that the self is an illusion, and we're all a combination of trillions of cells and bacteria who come up with this image of self, but it's not really a self. So if you wanted to tear into my worldview, I would start with that. But I think the idea of one self being comprised of three, and I saw Bill's meme today that it wasn't really a meme; it was a chart describing the Trinity, and I just don't think it works. I think if there's a self, then that's the self, and then I don't see how there can be cognitive functions that interact. And like Adam Johnson says, for those who haven't heard of Adam Johnson, he's got a great book about how the Trinity is the source of love. I don't see how that can be a good source of love. I just don't see how that can work. Now, I also haven't taken long scholarly courses on the Trinity, so there might be just a lot of ignorance talking here, but I don't see how three can be one.
Mm.
The Muslims, they call the Muslim bad guys anyway, call Christians polytheists, and they're polytheists, but they're to get around it, they just go, oh, it's all one. That's how they make fun of Christians.
Yeah.
See, I would say, just to push back on that idea, I would say that the Christian view of God is so far superior to the Muslim view of God because of the Trinity. Because within the Trinity you have a community of love, which I know you've got an issue with, Richard, but still, there, before anything existed, there was a community that was grounded in love and holiness. And it's a specific kind of holiness. Like holiness in and of itself is divine separateness, but at the same time, when there's a unity within holiness, like true holy living means that you love your neighbor as yourself, And within the Trinity, you see that already within a cohesive community. And I think it makes better sense if you're going to make a statement like God is love, which I don't think makes up the entirety of God's essence. I think first, God is holy, and because He's holy, He is loving, because the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, so on and so forth. But the, in that same chapter, in that same book of the Bible, 1 John, which that verse is taken from, God is love. It also says God is light, too. So, I mean, it's like, so I think there needs to be a distinction in there. It's like, the most perfect kind of love is a holy love, which is self-sacrificing, giving of itself, all of that. And so, God can't die, technically, like there's no way He could completely, but Jesus could, as part of the Trinity, sacrifice Himself for us. And that's one of the things I think that separates Christianity from any other world religion that I've ever studied. But that's my take on it.
I can see that. I can see that. Tyson, any thoughts?
No, I'm just actually thinking about, you were saying about your own view of our consciousness and the self really being an illusion, because all we all are is a group of bacteria and cells, which is kind of funny because when when we were talking about being stationed in Monterey earlier, I kind of look back and chuckle because technically then you wouldn't have been stationed in Monterey, right? It's just
Right.
the illusion of you in Monterey.
Right. It was an illusion. Yeah, that's true.
But what's
And
interesting is that
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to clarify what you just said. You go ahead.
What's interesting is, and I think there's a hint of an argument that seems to be formable, where even to say that there is an illusion, there has to be some sort of continuing thing to have the illusion.
Right, I agree.
Right.
Yeah, that goes back to Descartes, right? Even if it's an illusion, there's still something that's being fooled.
Yeah. So it's kind of obviously, because I believe that I have an immaterial soul that is the seat of identity that persists through time. That makes sense to me that I could have memories about me in 2017, 2018 when I was in Monterey. But it's difficult to see how the same illusion can persist through time without that, because it would seem like at some point the illusion would have to be completely different, right? Why would it be that the same illusion of Richard Stuttles persists through time rather than just randomly changing to Bill Scott or Mike Lacona or anybody else? I just find that very strange.
It is very strange, and it leads me to two things. One is that, to make it even worse, I think every 7 years, every cell in our body changes. So 7 years ago, all the cells, the trillions of cells, are no longer here. So now here I am 7 years later, a different, literally 100% different set of cells are now telling you that I was 7 years ago a different set of cells, completely different cells. No cell from there till now has made that transition, and yet here I am saying I was there, and yet I'm going to deny a soul. So I mean, like, if I was a Christian, I would tear me apart on that. That's a good one.
Well, I was just about to challenge you on that. I was like, the first thing that comes to mind is, like, you have kids. I mean, you're still their dad 7 years later. They would never not call you that. I mean, even after you're dead and gone, you'll still be their dad. So it's like, you would think that. I mean, I would think that theism would provide a much better explanation for the self than atheism would, because we always, I mean, why do we even fear death? I mean, because that's typical. I mean, I think part of that fear is like, myself is coming to an end one day. But it really doesn't, because your memories also live on. Not your memories, but memories of you will live on, even if your soul doesn't. If your worldview doesn't allow for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned this to Greg Kokel a couple of years ago when he and I were arguing. I was like, honestly, if I was in these conversations, I wouldn't want to be the atheist. I think we have the harder problem, which he enjoyed. He enjoyed that I said that, because I get, when it comes down to that, we got nothing. We're like, it's an illusion. We don't know how the illusion works. It's really weird, and search me. So that's less of a satisfying answer than what you guys have. I'll give you that one.
Did you say you were arguing with Greg Kokel?
Yes, I did. A couple of years ago, I went to a church in Texas, and not only that, me and Greg and Eric Hernandez all hung out that weekend. Had meals together, and we spent just like you saw me talking with Brett Kunkel. It was like that, but for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Very cool.
Yeah, he even mentioned me. He did like a podcast on the experience, and he mentioned that quote for me about how I said at the very end of it, I was like, man, I would not want to be the atheist in these conversations.
And yet
hey, one
you
more
persist.
thing. Yeah, I'm stubborn about that. Tyson mentioned, like, how do I work and do this? Well, it's because every so often I get called in, and I just got a alert, so I've got to hop off. So I think you guys can take the victory on this one.
We'll run it back soon.
Yeah. Well, appreciate your heart, and appreciate the work you do keeping us safe in our country. Like working counterterrorism stuff, man. Keep up
Thank
the
you,
good
man.
work.
Sure, and thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciated this.
Yeah, no problem. It's fun. See you, bud.
Talk to you soon. All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cool guy. Straighten this thing back out. I do like that about Ecamm, though, is like you can just adjust everything like that. Yeah, Richard's he's such a different kind of guy. I love this.
Well, yeah, it takes a different type of person to run, counterterrorism and, that sort of work for decades.
I talked to him about that, and that's part of the reason why he's doing what he's doing right now, is he sees like, so Richard will, just like he said, he'll hang out at these apologetics conferences. He does more than hang out. Like he actually like runs security, watches, helps where he can, sets up tables. I mean, he's really got a servant heart about him. And, he's kind of like a staple here in Houston apologetics conferences. Almost every one of them I go to, he's there. And he, living out in Arizona, I think, and flies in for them. But he kind of just wants to be an emissary, if you will. I guess that's the correct word. Like he just wants to keep the conversation going and help people see that he's not even trying to convert anybody to atheism. He's just, he's mainly just talking to people that are working the conferences. I mean, he's got very little chance that he's going to convert me, you, or especially Greg Kokel to atheism.
Well, I think I actually have seen him post things where if somebody came to him talking about struggling with their faith and experiencing doubt, and they really want to be strengthened in their faith, he's more likely to send them to, a pastor or an apologist, somebody who can speak to that on a spiritual level, than try and, convince them that religion is false, right? Yeah. That's just the type of guy that he is. He wants to see people strengthened and encouraged and helped along. So absolutely, I think that speaks a lot to his heart for people.
Yeah. He's good people, as good as an atheist can be, I guess. We tell him. Yeah. So,
well, man, let me put you in the hot seat for a second. So, gosh. I mean, it's your show, but I'm just going to take it over real quick.
All right. Well, I do what you say anyway, so whatever.
Yeah. We were on the phone yesterday talking about, just the changes that are happening and the, you stepping into this role with RCI and the things that are coming down the road. And I wonder if you could just spend a couple minutes talking about your vision for the future of RCI specifically, and maybe cast a vision for like really, what are your ambitions for it? What are the big things that, if everything goes perfectly, you would, aiming high, this is what you would like to see happen?
Yeah. So right now, I'm looking over at my map, so I still don't have it completely memorized, but I want to say that we are in like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 countries, but we also have a potential to be in a whole lot more. But really, I'm not looking for me personally, I'm not and not for Danny either, our current director. We're not really looking for numbers as much as we are like depth, but I think the numbers are going to be there too. Personally, I think between Reasonable Faith, Apologetics on Mission, Ratio Christi International, there's a few organizations like that are doing more than just YouTube videos and stuff like that. I mean, they're really purposely discipling people and creating the future of apologetics on a global scale. I mean, I don't want to sound negative, but America has been called a post-Christian culture now for quite a while. And, we're slipping very quickly. And it's happening so fast, I don't think you can't possibly pay attention to it unless you really know how to pay attention to it. And, you're seeing more and more biblical illiteracy in America. And there's we'll have students in our intro to theology classes at HCU that don't have a basic understanding of Christianity, yet have been Christians their whole life. And and there's been Barna statistics around for a while that say things like, I think it was in 2010, there was a stat that said 65% of professing Christians in America don't believe in a literal Satan anymore, and things like that. So it's like, I think we really need to pause and say, like, what do we mean when we say that America's a Christian nation? Because we certainly have a Christian foundation. We certainly have Christian ideas built into us, and that's obvious when you work in other countries. Things like the worth of personhood and stuff like that. But that's also been hijacked by all kinds of secular philosophies that that have made the worth of a person just personhood theory, where it's like, and social contract theory and things like that, where it's like none of these things, like marriage is not grounded in Christianity in this country as much as it is grounded in social contracts now, where it used to be grounded in Christianity, but now it's a social contract. So it can be divorce, why not? Gay marriage, why not? It's like it's all a contract. You have rights, and we forget that those rights come from God alone. And we had that privilege for a long time, but I'm afraid that's slipping. And so I look at America, like American ministry now, as if America is in rehabilitation mode, where, it's like, almost like they've been hooked on the secular ideologies and now they're in rehab to try to rehab them out of it. And you almost have to convince people that the secular ideologies are wrong, and then you can convince them of the biblical ideologies in which they've forsaken. Totally the opposite in a place like Kenya, or, a global South country, where the Bible is, in the scope of history, still kind of a new thing there, 150, 200 years max, and the secular ideologies are just now showing up in mass. And so, for instance, in 2019, when I was in Kenya, I was talking to Kenyans, and they were just bragging about how their president stood up to Barack Obama for trying to bring gay marriage to their country. They were like, yeah, that's because we're strong Kenyans. We believe in the family, and it was that kind of rhetoric. And then you go there last year, 2022, which is, not very long. And it's like the conversation had flipped, because last year, the same day that Jill Biden landed her plane in Nairobi, the Supreme Court in Nairobi passed all kinds of legislation, or the High Court, whatever it's called, passed all kinds of legislation for gay rights and homosexual, under human rights, NGO, like non-governmental organizations, so they can advocate for gay rights, bring in all the non-governmental organizations you want. And like, as a person who's, on the fringes of Kenya, really care about a country like Kenya and's been there a couple of times, I'm like, what happened in 3 years? Like in 2019, totally opposite. And then now it's like all the church people, of course, what happened was they immediately started coming after churches and mosques, by the way. And so it's like, now you have all these Kenyans saying, what do we do with this? How do we talk about this? And a lot of the rhetoric that you see here in America too, of, that you saw decades ago, that said, oh, we don't need apologetics. All we need is the Bible, that kind of stuff. Apologetics is a waste of time. And, so that was going on in Kenya too. And now you see a lot of Kenyans are like, okay, well, how do we deal with this LGBT issue? Well, apologetics, we can start there. And the good kind of apologetics, not the Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve type of apologetics. So that's just been my experience. So how can Ratio Christi do, like, what can we do? And so what I'm thinking, my vision, and we're still ironing this out, this is very rough draft right now, But what I would like to see is that we would be more than just chapter planters. I would like us to see a real role in education and taking education serious, and partnering with ministries like Reasonable Faith and Reasons to Believe and Apologetics on Mission, and whoever we can that's doing like global apologetic stuff, and not just do conferences. I hear that a lot, that apologetics on the mission field often looks like a big conference. Everybody gets a book and then they go home and say, wow, that was neat. But as my guys in Kenya told me a couple of weeks ago, I wish I had, Seika might hop on here in a minute. He said it best. He said, the reason that he wants to do Ratio Christi is because of the discipleship aspect and the education aspect, and they have the opportunity to reproduce apologists, which is what apologetics ministries need to be doing. It's what any mission ministry needs to be doing. So if we're going to do apologetics on mission, then it's going to be, are you creating a replicable program that will continuously churn out more apologists? And if you have people that think like that, then you start with this little nucleus of people, and then each person, grow two more people, then two more people. Before you know it, you have this whole web of people that are trained in apologetics, that are being educated in universities, that are shaping their culture, and then going out and changing their culture, and really putting up a roadblock to stop the Western ideologies going there. Amazed me, even in Cuba, they're going through an LGBT revolution down there right now too. And that's just one issue of many. And it's like, where did that come from? Believe it or not, it came from America. Like, they saw America go through that, and America somehow influenced Cuba to do that kind of thing. So we tend to think that what goes on in America doesn't spread overseas, but you can guarantee anything that happens in this country, Tyson, I'm sure you've seen this too, happens overseas within a decade at least. And that was 20 years ago. Well, now we all have these little guys. We all have cell phones. So now whatever hits YouTube is influencing somebody the next day.
Yeah.
So I feel like in Ratio Christi, what we have to do is, whenever we bring somebody on board and they say, yeah, I love apologetics. And I've talked to some guys, man, I wish you could have heard the conversation I had with a guy in Pakistan the other day. Like, he is doing a master's degree in natural theology right now. He's going to write a thesis on natural theology, heavily inspired by William Lane Craig. Would love to do a degree at Biola because J.P. Moreland's there. Like, he knew everybody. It was crazy. And this guy's in Lahore, Pakistan. And very fruitful conversation. And it's like, where do they get all this stuff? Well, they're getting it from the internet. So we have to do something to make sure that there's a lot of good content out there. I think that's part of it. But how do you take somebody like that and help them speak the same language as every other Ratio Christi thing, like getting them all centralized? So what I'd like to do is I'd like to use a program like Ben Clifton and company has put together with Apologetics on Mission, put them through a 16-week certificate program right off the bat, and then roll them into a cohort depending on their region, and let them meet with each other every couple of weeks, like we've been doing with these guys in Kenya, and and help them educate one another. I'm not an educator for the apologists in Kenya and Ratio Christi. They educate me. Like, they were teaching me stuff that I didn't know last week, like, trying to do apologetics in a certain cultural context. It really takes a lot of nuance and a lot of different ways of thinking. And they're over in my little reading nook over there on the other side of the office. But I mean, I have books all over this office that are, apologetics in the, apologetics in the African context and all this stuff, things like that. So yeah, matter of fact, Aseka just sent me a text, so maybe he'll hop on. So that's part of what we'd like to do. I'd love to see in each of these countries, I'd love to see a couple of different Ratio Christi missionaries on every university campus. I'd love to see a team on every campus. That'd be a goal of mine too. I'd like to see our Ratio Christi chapters here in the United States feel the urge to go overseas and help hold a conference for these guys as they're trying to build their programs in a place like Abuja, Nigeria, or Nairobi, Kenya, or Johannesburg, South Africa. What's it called? Cluj. I'm going to slaughter this. They just call it Cluj in Romania. We've got somebody in Romania. London, possibly the Baptist Seminary down in Cuba, if we can get all that worked out. Possibly Cambodia. Philippines has got a strong program there. Those guys are turning out people with a master's degree. The Ratio Christi group in the Philippines has created a master's degree program and attached it to a university, got it accredited, and is churning out 45 or so missionaries a year with a master's degree to go out and hopefully plant other Ratio Christi chapters around Southeast Asia. It's just crazy.
That's amazing.
I know. It's like the stuff that these guys are already doing is pretty amazing. I just look at myself as somebody that's coming alongside and just saying, all right, you've got all these amazing things going on. What if we can just centralize all that into this one big nucleus of just powerful global apologetics, and then partner with other people, and just, because we're all playing for the same team. I mean, you look at it, it's like a basketball team. It's like apologetics on mission. They're like a power forward, and then I'm a center, and you're a point guard with reasonable faith, and we just want to see people come to Jesus. It's not like we're in a competition or anything. So it's like, what can we do to pool all our resources and just be like, let's flood the world with good ideas, or how did C.S. Lewis put it? Like, good philosophy must exist because bad philosophy already exists. So we have to get out there and put it out there, So that's my vision in short. So, and Aseko will hop on here in just a minute and talk to me more about it. So you don't have to stay on here with me all night.
Yeah, I do need to get going pretty soon. Yeah. I love your vision, man. And I like how you emphasize it's not just about numbers. It's about discipleship and making leaders who will multiply.
Yeah.
And I think that gets lost so much in especially the apologetic side of things, because we are concerned about making converts, right? That's part of what we do, is we challenge the unbeliever because we value their souls, we love them, and we want them to come to Christ. At the same time, apologetics is so much more useful than just that, right? It strengthens believers. It raises up leaders in the church, honestly. The people who are the most confident in the church should be the ones who have the best reasons to believe that it's true, right? And I've seen this personally where I was teaching at a church in Nebraska when I was stationed there at Offutt Air Force Base. I was teaching a class, an apologetics class. We were going through Dr. Craig's book, On Guard. We got through that class, and immediately one of the pastors came up to me and he said, so we've had a bunch of requests for a class on evangelism because people are so much more confident in their faith now. They want to have conversations. So how do you feel about teaching an evangelism class?
There you go.
I said, let's do it. Praise God. I can't even think of a better outcome of teaching an apologetics class than people desiring to do more evangelism. And I think that's a trend that we will see in the church as apologetics becomes more incorporated, is that we're going to see more people who are willing to go out there and share their faith because they have that confidence that it's true, that it's real, that it can change lives. So I love that your vision incorporates that element to make disciples who are leading the way across the world in evangelism, challenging the culture, making stronger believers, and multiplying. So
yeah.
I'm all for Team Bill.
Yeah. We have this is one of our stickers, Ratio Christi, but you can see our little diagram here. That's what Ratio Christi is about. The first square is apologetics, and the second square is evangelism, and Ratio Christi is where we meet in the middle. That's part of our philosophy, is like you cannot separate apologetics from evangelism. And you cannot separate evangelism from apologetics, because as soon as you do, evangelism without using apologetics is going to fall short in reaching the cultural questions that are being asked. It's gonna, it's gonna fall short. And we live in a post-Christian culture, so we have to, we have to have some pre-evangelism, as Francis Schaeffer called it. But also, apologetics falls well short when you don't put evangelism with it. Some of the ugliest things that I've ever seen in apologetics is just apologetics for apologetics' sake. It's just, nothing bores me to tears more than a visionless group of people that just sit around and talk about these high-minded ideas all day and does nothing about it. It's like, okay, well, like you have memorized Anselm's ontological argument, and that is, it was Anselm, right?
He formulated one of them.
Yeah, one of them. Yeah, so you've got through all of Anselm's ontological argument. Then what are you doing with that? It's like, are you just glad you memorized it, or are you going to actually try to bring that up in a conversation? And you're not going to have a conversation about the ontological argument every day of your life. But you got to.
I try to. I lose more friends that way.
Yeah. Just drop it on Xbox Live when you're sitting there playing.
How do you feel about S5 modal logic?
Yeah, guys, have you ever considered that God's a maximally great being? But
video game chat.
Can you conceive of a greater being than God? I can't. I just can't. I don't know. But yeah, I can just imagine that too. I'm sorry, I've been on a tangent here. Like, then your buddy's like, "What do you mean by maximally great?" Well, I'm glad you asked, because that would make a sweet TikTok reel, whatever, TikTok video or reel or something. But anyway, no, I really think you have to do that, and I think that's great that, when we had our evangelism class here last year, we had an evangelism book study that met on Tuesday nights with our Ratio Christi club. The first book I took them through was Darrell Brock, Cultural Intelligence. It was really good. Just kind of like, this is what we're about and this is what we do. It's a 5-chapter book, and it took us almost all semester to go through it. It was just loaded with all kinds of little things. And then after that, one of our assistant chapter directors took them through On Guard, and a lot of our students really, really liked On Guard. That's Dr. Craig's, that's basically Intro to William Lane Craig Apologetics book. And when you ask our faculty up here, we were searching for the book, like what's the best intro to apologetics book written. All of our faculty basically agreed that it was On Guard. Like, I can't speak for all of them, but almost everybody I asked were like, On Guard's pretty much where to start. I mean, that's the go-to. And if I can plug On Guard, like Dr. Craig needs a plug, but if I can plug that, what I like about that book and why I recommend it so often, and I know people get, I don't know if people can hear that ringing. People get tore up about that, about Craig sometimes. But what I love about On Guard is it's very basic, and it starts with God exists, and here's why. And then by the time you get to the end of it, it's Jesus rose from the dead, and here's how we know that. And that's such a good way to do apologetics, man. Such a good way to do apologetics, because you are, covering all the ground that way. So yeah, let me see before you go. I want you to meet this guy anyway, so this will be cool. Let's see. Show in current scene. Faithist Atheist.
So Alex, in the comments, she said apologetic satire. So we were talking about that a little bit ago. I actually started an apologetic satire blog like years ago, and I haven't added any articles in a while. But if you want to look up some of the past articles, it's called Faux Apologetics, FAUX Apologetics, and it's I think it's like a WordPress blog. But yeah, I have some really funny articles on there. Like, they're kind of like Babylon Bee style articles, but for specifically apologetics. One of them was like, DEA bust, accidentally bust narcotics ring using Greg Kokel's tactics.
That's great. That's good. All right, hold on just a minute. Oh, look at that! It worked out first time. Look at this guy. It's my boy Aseka from Nairobi. Say hi, Aseka.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
Hey, good to
He,
meet you.
this guy's
Good
this
to meet
guy.
you too.
So you guys have never met each other. Do you know Tyson? Aseka, you know who Tyson is?
No.
Okay, so he's the global director for William Lane Craig's ministry, Reasonable Faith, and
Whoa.
and so now don't don't act like you're not a star, because Aseka is like, he's like the William Lane Craig of Kenya. Like, everybody knows this guy. It's so funny. Like, we were talking about it last week. He is, I think it's two guys on our 4-person team that we have in Kenya that we're starting up right now. We're inspired to go into apologetics through Aseka's ministry, like years ago. And he won't brag on himself, but I'll brag on him, because he's like one of the wisest people I've met in the world. I've really enjoyed getting to know this man. He's just become a very dear friend of mine. So Aseka, welcome. Now you worked with the C.S. Lewis Institute in Kenya, correct?
Yes,
And you're
yes. I run some programs, some discipleship programs around Nairobi.
Yeah, and then you're also doing some global training in the C.S. Lewis Institute now too. Didn't you say you're working with people in South America and things like that?
Yes, yes, yes. Actually, I run virtual small groups, discipleship programs, largely oriented towards apologetics. We believe that apologetics is one of the most viable tools for grounding people's faith, in as much as it helps us to be able to engage people of other faiths as well.
So you operated the Kenyan context there. You have Reasonable Faith chapters in Kenya? I'm sure you do.
No, not yet. I've not come across reasonable faith, but we are beneficiaries of the resources online. Oh my.
Tyson, how can you not be in Nairobi, man? You just need to go to Nairobi. Just
I know we're working on it.
You need to make
we
a trip to Kenya with me sometime. You'll end up with a couple of guys.
Yeah, yeah. We have a few chapters in Africa, mainly South Africa and Nigeria, and we've had applications from several other countries in Africa, but it's difficult because you have to get through the certification process, and to do that, you have to read the Reasonable Faith Third Edition and complete the study guide. And I don't know if you've seen the study guide for that book, but it is a monster. So, yeah, but I would love to open a chapter in Kenya.
Most welcome. I know there are people around here who will be very delighted to know that they are interacting with reasonable faith. There's a lot of need for apologetics around here, and people who can give reasonable responses that are balanced and are pointing people towards Christ. I think that is lacking around here, and that's why at times we feel overwhelmed. I do a lot of engagements in high schools around here and universities. The number of questions that you have to deal with, at times you just feel overwhelmed because
Oh,
you realize the moment you leave, you know that those young ones are not responses you would have wished them to get. So it's, I think, for us, any hand that comes our way, we graciously embrace it because we know at the end of the day, it's Matthew 28. We
Hmm.
are doing what we are commanded to do.
so and I know Aseka is well familiar with William Lane Craig's work. Among a couple, I'm going to put this guy on the spot. Among a couple of things that he said to me that was, I brag on him sometimes. People's like, I met this guy in Kenya that said that everybody needs to read Philosophical Foundations of a Christian Worldview yearly.
Yes, yes,
I was like,
yes,
I know people with
yes.
master's degrees that's never even cracked that book. and But I don't know.
It's quite a huge volume.
Yeah, or casually one time we were talking and he just casually said something like, I don't know if it was the 6th or 7th time I read The Abolition of Man, but
Yes, yes.
Just casually.
yeah, I was like, what? Like that's so funny. But we get to meet people like that's the beautiful thing about all this is like apologetics has become such a global community. It's just such a wonderful and I don't think maybe you've seen this, Tyson. I don't think people realize that it's such a global community just yet. I think that's just kind of it's kind of an untapped field, if you will. And at the same time, it's kind of an apostolic ministry because, like you said, Reasonable Faith, you don't have any chapters in Kenya yet. And we don't have any chapters in South America in Ratio Christi. And, and isn't that amazing? How many chapters do you have in South America, though?
It's got to be close to 50, I think. Yeah.
Wow.
And so isn't that amazing that like it seems like God is using us in different areas to plant seeds and overlap and things. And when you get this global conversation going, it real quick turns into like I kind of think I see how God's working like through all this stuff, whether through absolute sovereignty or subjunctive conditionals or however we want to say it, but it's working somehow. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. I wrote an article not too long ago for the Worldview Bulletin newsletter where I talked about the immense loneliness that a lot of apologists feel because they're the only ones who have the training that they do in their areas. Usually, there are very few people that have the type of training that they do, and the church often doesn't see them as a resource to be used and valued and cherished, and so oftentimes we feel like we're very lonely where we are. And I think it's amazing that we live in a time where we have the tools to stay in community and build each other up in a way that never existed before. So, like we're talking to Aseka in real time, thousands and thousands of miles away, the other side of the world. Yeah. That's just amazing. And you think about the providence of God, where we live in a time where apologetics is more advanced than it ever has been before. We need more apologetics workers, and here we are at a point in time where we're able to enjoy the most community among ourselves around the world that we ever have. It kind of reminds me of, God's timing in sending Christ in the first century, and the spread of the gospel because of the Roman road and the Pax Romana and people being able to travel when prior to that there wasn't the transit system or the roadway system that would enable that. So I feel so privileged and honored to be alive in a time where I can have fellowship with people like Aseka and others in foreign countries who share this heart for both evangelism and apologetics.
It's true, and it's also cool to learn from one another. Like I was saying before you hopped on here, Aseka, like the last meeting, what we've been doing in our cohort meetings we meet every other Friday with 3 other guys from Kenya. And we did a couple weeks ago, like last month, our meeting was about prayer, just prayer. And I've asked apologists this before. It's kind of a lacking thing among the apologetics, the intellectual Christian community, the necessity of prayer and Christian disciplines and things like that. But I've never met a Kenyan or an East African yet that didn't have an emphasis on prayer and study of God's word. It's just like, and I feel like that sanctifies me because, sometimes in our echo chamber in the West, it doesn't really, that's not normally what we talk about. We normally don't bring that up, but that's a priority for people, I think, in other parts of the world. And then I think we have things to offer them too. And it's like we go back and it's like a give and take kind of thing from what I'm seeing. I'm just now getting my feet wet in it, but at the same time, it's just been so life-giving for me to just think of it on this level. So while we have Aseka on here, so from your perspective, like what are the biggest apologetic needs in East Africa right now? Like, what are some of the big things coming down the pipe, the big questions that you have to answer? Because you spend a lot of time, like you said, in universities and schools and things. So what are some of the big things you're facing?
Well, one of the most challenging questions that keeps on popping up is has been the question of pain and suffering. I remember in the year, I think it was 2013, I'd been invited to speak in a high school. And one young man approached me after my session and was like, "Why do bad things happen to good people?" I'm like, "Whoa, this is a 17-year-old chap, and he's struggling with that reality." And when you transition into the universities, when they get a bit enlightened, you come to discover them having to grapple with the issue of evolution, things to do with traditionalism. You know, Africa is quite traditional nature. And in the recent past, I've seen a transition. People are now going back to tradition, and in a way, kind of assuming that Christianity doesn't work for them. So people are struggling with where the place of culture as far as Christianity is concerned. So we are seeing a problem when it comes to things like syncretism. I think Apostle Paul tackles that when he writes that letter to the believers in Colossae. And the other one has been, of course, the reality of circumstances vis-a-vis the faith that we profess. Africa has its fair share of challenges, and that's where prayer comes in. As Bill was talking, I was like, whoa, God is so strategic in the sense that he builds other people when it comes to issues to do with prayer, and builds other people when it comes to issues to do with knowledge and concepts, and brings them together as a team. And I think those are the main issues that we are seeing. And maybe something else has been lack of manpower. I think, Bill, you've observed that when you are here, so many guys are so excited about apologetics, but they are running to wrong sources.
Mm.
People who have very liberal perspectives of theological perspectives, and they end up giving misleading responses on the pretext of apologists. So training. I think we need to train as many as we possibly can, and that's why I think with C.S. Lewis Institute we are doing a lot of discipleship, and the discipleship programs are oriented towards apologetics, so that people can be able to respond. So those are some of the issues and experiences that we are encountering around here in East Africa, so to speak, because I've had an opportunity to engage Tanzanians and Ugandans. Actually, I've been speaking in Uganda. So when you look at those aspects, you're like, oh God, help us. And I think he's answering that prayer by virtue of being on this call. That's an answered prayer. And we feel energized and encouraged to keep on keeping on. Yeah.
Do appreciate that, Aseka. It's probably about time. I know Tyson had to get out at about this time, so Tyson, if you want to duck out, man, I can bring Aseka over and we'll do a two-way chat
Yeah,
here. But
I think it was great to meet you, bud. I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Thank you so much. Looking forward. Welcome to Nairobi.
God bless you, brother. All right. Thanks, Bill.
All right, see you, brother. All right, get you over here and spread you out a little bit on this thing. There we go. So yeah, it's been a good chat, man. We've been at this for almost an hour and 45 minutes. I'm like, we don't do a lot of long form videos like this on this channel. But we've went through. I think you're our third guest tonight. Yeah. So we've had an atheist.
Whoa, that's nice.
We've had Tyson the whole time, and then we had you, man. Cool. Yeah, it's so you said problem of evil, pain and suffering. Why is there suffering? Why do bad things happen to good people? So let's see. So what else would be some of the intrinsic issues there in Africa? in East Africa. Now, East Africa, just for everybody who isn't familiar with their geography, that is on the Indian Ocean. Kenya borders the Indian Ocean. Kenya's just below Somalia. If you know how Africa makes like a point, they call it the Horn of Africa. Kenya's about a country and a half below that. And then you have, so if you go over to East Africa, they used to have the East African tourist visa. I think Kenya dropped out of that for some reason, but it used to be that you could get a tourist visa when you traveled East Africa and go to Uganda, I think Burundi, Rwanda, and maybe Tanzania. And Kenya. But I think Kenya dropped out because they probably weren't benefiting much from that. Probably felt like they were carrying the weight of everybody else on their shoulders or something, because Kenya's pretty, it seems like Kenya's kind of like far more advanced than most other countries in East Africa from what I've seen, like as far as infrastructure and technology and things like that. They have better cell phone service in Kenya than they do in America. It's hilarious to me. Their internet, their data is lightning fast over there. 5G, even out in the middle of the desert sometimes. Like it's like, where is a cell phone tower? Like, how do I have 5 bars of 5G? Yeah, my wife has trouble sending me a text from like her office in the biggest city in the United States, one of the biggest cities in the United States. It's kind of funny, but yeah. So when we say East Africa, it's like this chunk of countries, you know. So like they have their own issue. They have their own issues. Like they're not going to have the same issues that are going on in South Africa, but some of those issues bleed over, and they're not going to have the same issues as you would in West Africa, because Africa is a huge continent. It's enormous. It takes you, you know, when I fly to Africa, it usually takes me a little over a day to get there. It's about 20. I think the shortest flight I've ever had to East Africa has been 22 hours, but it's usually a 27-hour flight or so. You'll usually fly into a place like Amsterdam or Frankfurt or Paris, and Frankfurt, Germany, or Paris, France. And then you'll fly down, and you think the journey's over because you're on that side of the globe, but it's not. No, you're flying down. You got to fly over North Africa and all that. That's another 10 or 12 hours just to fly, not even halfway down the continent of Africa. It's enormous how big that place is. So they have enormous cultures. So imagine everything from Egypt to the Maasai people in Kenya. And there's really only about 4 or 5 countries in between all that, you know. So like trying to think of that continent geographically is like, there's not, and what I'm trying to say is there's not one apologetic approach that you can take. You can't say like African context apologetics. I mean, you really have to divide it up and say like, what is East Africa dealing with? Well, then you get to Nairobi, and this is from a Mzungu perspective. Okay, you get to Nairobi, and then you land in Nairobi, and there's a kind of people in Nairobi, and you get to know, and you feel like you're getting to know Kenya. And then you hop on the Madaraka Express in Nairobi, and go 5.5 hours down to the coast in Mombasa. You get off the Madaraka Express, and it's like, this is like a whole other world right here in Kenya. And I tell people, if you ever want to feel like, as a Mzungu, which is a white man, if you want to ever feel like a minority, go to Mombasa, Kenya, because it's like, if you're a white Christian in Mombasa, Kenya, I would imagine that you're part of, like, maybe the demographic would be 1 or 2% of all the people in Mombasa. And that's a big city. What, 700,000 people or something? And then there's I would say there's less than 500 white Christians in Mombasa. I would guess. I've never seen a white Christian in Mombasa that wasn't from like Germany on vacation, holed up in a resort somewhere or something. So yeah, it's just such and Mombasa is like a Muslim city. I mean, the kind of Islam that you would think the Middle East would have is there right there in Mombasa, full body burqas and things like that. Even little girls like 4 years old with just like eye covers. The only thing you'll see is their eyes, just full body burqa Islam. And there's the Al-Shabaab terror cell down there. that wreaks havoc from time to time, and you kind of be mindful of that. And then you go back to Nairobi, and you're having it's like a totally different world. It's like people, all, I don't want to mischaracterize Mombasans, but it's just like two totally different societies. Is all I'm saying. It's just crazy to me. So you go ahead. I won't interrupt your thoughts. Go ahead.
Yeah, and then if you get an opportunity to head west, you get a totally different experience altogether. One of the beautiful things about Nairobi is the cosmopolitan nature. Though Kenya as a country has like 42 tribes, those are cultures in themselves. So, as you said, Bill, when you're doing apologetics around here, you must factor in things like cultural orientations. My approach to apologetics in Mombasa is going to be very different from Nairobi, and it's going to be quite different from Western Kenya. So, you need to be quite, think, dynamic and versatile. And yeah, and I think that's where the prayer comes in. You have to keep on praying and interacting with people so that the Lord guides you right and gives you the right words when opportunity arises to engage.
It's true. That's one of the things I really love about doing global work like this is you really have to rely on the Lord. I mean, even to get there.
Yes.
Honestly, Aseka, I can share this now. Since I've been on this podcast, I got an email that alerted me and told me that the first donation came in for me to travel this summer. It's like from there, it's a reliance on the Lord. And it was quite
Praise
a
the
large
Lord.
donation. Praise God. It was so we're at a $9,000 budget to travel this summer, and 5,000 of it just came in. So woo, praise Jesus. So that means
Hallelujah.
my plane tickets are bought. But that's what that means. So now I might be sleeping on the ground, but at least I can get there. But so long story short, like you said, you just said something interesting a second ago. Like, it's relying upon the Lord to give you wisdom to talk about stuff. It's relying upon the Lord for your provisions, for everything when you're doing this kind of work. And I'm so grateful that I have to rely upon God and not my government, not a
Yeah.
a corporation or something like that. It's, because the Lord's always seen fit to send us wherever we need to go and do what we need to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I experienced that last year too when I feel like in Nairobi, you can speak. The seeds are already planted for apologetics and theology in Nairobi, but I feel like when you're in
Yes.
Mombasa, you almost have to, it's like you almost have to introduce it more. You have to convince people of the need
Yes.
of
Yes.
apologetics more.
Yes.
So, what have you done in Africa to do that? And do you think those things would transfer to another place like like Chiang Mai, Thailand, or Philippines, or something like that? I mean, how do you convince East Africans for the need of apologetics? And let's see if this would transfer just based on some of my other conversations that I've had with people.
Well, first of all, I think the emphasis on prayer and trusting God to grant you wisdom on how to go about it. Secondly, is keep on keeping on. You have to keep on keeping on. You have to keep on going. Thirdly, I think you need to be very strategic as far as ministry is concerned. If I'm doing apologetics, uh, actually around here you might bump into people telling you you cannot do apologetics, you cannot do those kinds of sermons or talks in some places along the coastline. I tell them, no, 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 no. I think the approach is what matters. Of course, what I've done in the past, I actually started doing active evangelism with an apologetic edge. I think that was the 2008 thereabout. And I've realized that over the years, of course, you start by introducing a sermon, and you give it an apologetic tangent, and people start asking you, how are you preaching in that way? At the end of the sermon, that's when you tell them, what I've been doing is what we call apologetics. It's not something that it's out there, it's something that we need. And because you've seen it, then people start buying into it consciously, and they start getting very deliberate. Of course, small groups. The university is a very important avenue. The university is a very important avenue. I reiterate that because the university brings together people from different parts of the country. And when they land there, they get the seeds of apologetics have already been sown. And they realize that there are people who are not afraid to engage. And when they go back to the hinterland, now they start creating that platform for people to engage. And over the years, we are realizing that the impact is now, we are starting to see the impact. You're getting feedback from places you never expected. And we praise the Lord for that. For instance, northern Kenya, I think in one of our meetings, we shared the testimony of a young man who got converted to Christ through an evangelistic excursion in northern Kenya by the university students. So that guy got born again and then landed at a Christian university. Right now, he's a translator. He went back to his village and helped translate the Bible into their local language.
Wow.
So when these people are asking questions, you are able to respond. And as I have said, strategy. And it's not. When I look back, I realize that it's not how good I am. It's not how good we are. It's the alliances that the Lord brings, orchestrates. For example, Bill, and through Bill, I've met other people. It's the determination on the ground to see to it that the word of God is preached. So when we do that, I think it can replicate to other places and areas. You've mentioned Thailand, Chiang Mai. Yeah, places like Cambodia. I think I have a heart for Cambodia. Places like Vietnam. Um, these are places that are in need. So the approach is, Lord, show me your way, but don't give up. So I think that's how we've been, in a nutshell, that's how we've been doing it around here. And yeah, for the past 20 years, I've started to feel the impact. And the Lord has continued to make sure that he enlarges the place of our tents. I mean, he strengthens us by bringing people from other parts of the globe to beef up what is already happening on the ground. So, Bill, whatever you're doing is impactful, uh, very impactful. And we pray that the Lord continues to strengthen you and grant you more grace to do this work.
Well, hey, man, the feeling's totally mutual because my experiences in Nairobi and Kenya, in particular last year, and particularly Nairobi, really showed me where my place is in all of this. And like, if it wasn't for like, you know, the big chicken wing dinner that me and you and the guys had, we ate way too many chicken wings, sat in that restaurant way too long. You know, and then
Yeah.
dancing, meeting me over there too, and we just, you know, sitting around, talking, seeing that there's a real, like, not it. My mindset before last summer was that we're gonna have to go over here and teach people apologetics so they can go out and do it more. But then I met you guys and I was instantly encouraged, like, whoa, like these guys can actually teach people apologetics. So all we need to do is mobilize them and get them plugged in. And was it you or Ben a month or so ago that said, when we were talking about what it means to be a Ratio Christi missionary, and you said something, I don't know if you could replicate this quote. Was that you or Ben that said that the difference between us and other ministries was that the emphasis on discipleship and evangelism in a university. Was that you or Ben that said something like that?
I think it's Ben. That must have been Ben.
Yeah, because it really just like nailed it down for me, because you're like, you guys, or Ben and everybody tended to agree that it was, if we can't reach the university, we have no chance of reaching the culture. Like, that's just brass
Yes,
tacks. And
yes.
I think you see that denial in the United States with a lot of people, especially people in rural areas. They're like, what does the university have to do with me? It's like, well, man, because of these things, because of tablets and computers, cell phones, internet, these ideas that are in the university, and not least, oh my goodness, not least, mainstream media is just filled with
Mm-hmm,
people who got these ideas from universities and are just spewing it all
mm-hmm,
over the culture. And I was on a radio program there in Kenya last year, and I think they said the same thing on that radio program. They said, reaching the university is so important because right now, oh no, actually it was with you, Seika. I remember you saying that most of the media in Kenya has been trained in the United States, and
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and so your mainstream news outlet, if I could quote you, I believe you put it as clear as a bell. You said most of the mainstream media reports from a very humanist perspective, secular humanist perspective. There's a good kind of humanism
Yes, yes.
that's Christian humanism. That's kind of what C.S. Lewis was consider him a Christian humanist, person that values the person. But then a secular
Mm-hmm,
humanist has a whole lot to do with, it's like the foundation of liberalism, and liberalism
mm-hmm.
is pretty much, I mean, it's very anti-God in a lot of ways. That's not just my opinion,
Yes.
but the political liberalism that's in the United States, that's the only party that's advocating for unbiblical ideas wholesale. I mean, you could make an argument there's some unbiblical ideas on the other side of the aisle, but like, if you put the two on a scale, it would be like this. It's like, to me, that's
Mm-hmm,
obvious. Amazing to me, though, there are people in America that cannot see that, but it seems like Kenyans are well aware of it because they've not had to deal with it. It's not such a long-term process like it's been here. You know what I
mm-hmm,
mean?
mm-hmm.
Here
Yes.
we've been indoctrinated over the period of decades, whereas in Kenya, this stuff, it's like just landed on a plane and arrived. It's like,
Mm-hmm,
so
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I don't know. So as an apologist, yeah, do you have to deal with that a lot? I mean, are there a lot of humanistic ideas being passed down through mainstream media that you're having to deal with?
Yes, yes. I think there has been a steep rise in the emphasis of removing God from the equation of man. I think the redefinition of truth.
Mm-hmm.
What is truth for you is truth for you. Let's agree to disagree. I think that is a wrong notion because it seems it waters down the objective truth that C.S. Lewis is talking about. And when we miss the objective truth, then we don't have a reference point. We become gods in our own selves. And when we become gods, when a human being becomes God, you see what happens in Genesis chapter 3. We are on self-destruct mode. So some of these tendencies that have been seeping and finding their space in our society have been largely, I think, fomented by things like Facebook, TikTok. Is a new thing, and
Yeah.
everyone is on TikTok. Yeah, so the sad reality is that the believers, content creators who are on TikTok is, I think it's less than 1%.
Mm.
And you can imagine somebody spending hours on TikTok, what that does to their thinking, their worldview. It warps their worldview. And when things that are liberal, things to do with sexuality, things to do with atheism. Actually, in Kenya, you realize that atheism is becoming a fad. It's a
Yeah.
fad.
Yeah,
When
see,
I go
that was
somewhere and I say I'm an atheist, so many people listen to me. But when I say I'm a Christian, you'll be frowned upon.
uh, and I don't feel like it was like that in 2019 when I was in Kenya. But I spent
No.
most of my time in Mombasa, but I did spend some time in Nairobi. But I was really just transferring from Nairobi to Mombasa. But talking to everybody I talk to, though, everywhere I go, I'll just start a conversation and just try to get my finger on the pulse of what's going on in the culture. I didn't feel like atheism was that popular in 2019, and I'm not sure what happened there because we just had my buddy Richard on here, he's got a page and channel and things, social media influencer. He's called the Faithiest Atheist. I mean, he's a very friendly atheist that likes to have the hard conversations and keep the classical conversation going and everything. He's a very deep thinker, but it's like you said, atheism on the West is actually on the decline. But you said in East Africa, it's actually it's inclining. It's going up.
It's yeah, it's going up.
That
Yes,
doesn't
yes,
make
yes.
sense. Why is that? I don't. Is it because of
I think
social media,
yeah,
YouTube? What?
social media. Um, when I was growing up, my parents were very keen to take me to Sunday school, and as I transitioned through various stages and milestones in life, I realized that some of my teachers, Sunday school teachers, when I went back and started asking difficult questions, they were not ready and willing to engage. I think it's by the grace of God that I am where I am today. Uh, if that were the case and it cuts across, then it means that so many questions have been left unanswered, and people always run to Google. And when they Google, they'll always get wrong responses to right questions. So, with wrong responses, worldviews are warped. They get very negative lenses, which end up forming the foundation of their belief system. And in a way, they start discussing it amongst themselves within campuses, within high schools, and it forms a culture.
Yeah.
It forms a culture. I got invited to train. I think it was a training in one of the local churches around here, intern pastors, and I was to talk about apologetics. So my my first question was, before we engaged in the subject, was, why are you a Christian and nothing else and not something else? And some of them were like, I was born this way. You see, those are the kinds of responses they are giving. If a minister tells you I'm a Christian because I was born this way, I'll be very disappointed. It
Yeah.
basically means they don't recognize the historicity of Christ, the evidence that Christianity supports. And if that is the kind of chaperone who's going to take care of the young people, then it means that so many gaps are going to be left. They are going to leave so many gaps, and with so many gaps, eventually you'll have a generation of young people who don't see the sense of Christianity, and that's what we are trying to counter by being there to answer those questions.
We see the same thing in the United States. I have a good friend of mine um, who walked away from his faith at 13 years old because he had questions,
Oh,
and his pastor finally just got fussy with him and said, "You just got to have faith," and he was like, "Faith in what? Like you're supposed to be a
what
professional."
do you
And he's
mean?
yeah, like what like so that was communicated to him as and it followed him into adulthood until he was through medical school, that he never became a Christian again, but he finally realized that Christianity does not presuppose a blind faith. And Christianity
Hmm.
is actually a faith that is based on sound evidence and reasons to believe. It's not the blind faith
Hmm.
idea was not espoused until Soren Kierkegaard come on the scene. Francis Schaeffer points that out in his work. Nancy Pearcey reiterates it all the time. But the Christian faith up until the Enlightenment era was grounded in reason and evidences, and that's why I point this out to when I was doing some TA work here at Houston Christian University. I was a teacher's assistant. I had the privilege to lecture a few times, and remember one of my lectures was on the Trinity, and I based it around the not the Athanasian Creed, but the Apostles' Creed. And in the second block of the Apostles' Creed, it might be like the fifth or sixth line, but it says that and Jesus was crucified by Pontius Pilate. And I asked my students, why do you think they left that in there? And of course, none of them answered. Like they were like, I don't know. Well, he was the guy that crucified him after all. Like I said, I don't know this for sure. It's just my interpretation of this, but I would imagine they left that in there as a historical marker, or at least if that wasn't their intention,
Yes.
that's how we can see it anyway. It's like Jesus wasn't just crucified by the Romans. They could have easily said that and left it ambiguous. But when you put it to a specific person in history, then you're basically stating a case. It's like Jesus was crucified by
Yes.
Pontius Pilate. He was the Roman governor at this time in history. This is when Jesus was crucified. And it's like it's almost like a historical artifact, because why I can't think of any other logical reason why the church who loves Jesus Christ would want to remember the name of the person that killed him, other than here's a historical marker, like this actually happened. And a lot of people just don't grasp that kind of Christianity. I don't think we talk about it nearly enough. And what I love about doing ministry in Africa, in East Africa, at least it's been my experience, is that all of that seems so fresh and so new to the young people there that they just it's almost magnetic for them. They're like, this is so cool. How come I've never heard this kind of stuff before? Has that been your experience as well? Because almost in America, it's almost like there's a resistance. It's like, what are you talking about? It's like, are you appealing to authority or something? But in Africa, it's just almost like their hearts are just ready to receive that. They're like, oh, so my faith is reasonable. Awesome. I'm ready to go.
Yes. Yes. I think one of the aspects about the African culture, specifically in Kenya, most cultures, they are very welcoming, and part of that has made them to be very hospitable. The the downside of that is that at times their hospitality has entertained very negative schools of thought, people who come with very negative ideologies, and you entertain them, they convince you, and you end up getting lost. But on the other side, the benefit of that has been we have seen people who have embraced the right truth, the right doctrine, the right doctrine and the truth, and that has transformed their lives. Now, you see, when people are growing up, they grow up pursuing a certain end, and they'll always become better. What you're seeing is an upsurge of young people who are intellectually maturing, but spiritually they are stunted. So we have babies in the faith, and they are standing against intellectual giants. So what we are doing as believers and disciples around here is we are trying to nurture the babies in the intellectual giants so that they can be able to match and respond to issues that have been posed by the intellectual world. And I think you see, when you taste something, you see that it's David who says, taste and see, and you'll see that this is good. I think when they taste and they realize, wow, this thing works, it gives them boldness. It gives them boldness. I'm reminded of Apostle Paul when during the Pentecost, the sermon, and then the listeners asked, "What shall we do?" I think I normally face those kinds of responses after my engagements. People will always come, and others will come to my social platform and inbox me. How do you go about this? How have you ended up here? And then, first of all, I point them to Christ, and I tell them through Christ, He'll point you to these other aspects. And that's where discipleship starts. And when you walk with other people like Ben and other like minded believers, it makes the work so beautiful as you see hearts transformed.
Yeah.
And you know that you've changed a life.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I've never seen, because last year when Kevin had me come over, Kevin from Apologetics Kenya, Marithi,
Yes.
and he, when I asked him in Kenya, like, what is the one subject that you need to be needs answering right now, and he said, well, LGBTQ is a huge one because of all the stuff that happened last February, and I love and I love how, like, that was challenging for me because, Kenya, a lot of people don't realize that Kenya was on the World Watch List not too long ago as one of the most persecuted countries in the world by Muslim extremists in the north. And so I thought I'd spent a lot of time on Islam, and the Lord just kind of woke me up and was like, like, you're not going to be a counter-Islamic apologist everywhere you go. It was like, because what Kevin asked me to do was talk about something that was totally out of my wheelhouse, totally out of my comfort zone, but the Lord had sovereignly placed me in a class with Nancy Piercy that semester and was being trained in that specific argumentation, not knowing that I would go to Kenya. I didn't even know I was going to go to Kenya until like January last year or something. And I'd already been in that class. But the Lord knew what He was doing. And when you give a talk on the LGBT issues in America, I don't think I could be wrong, but I can't remember one time I've given a talk on that somewhere where somebody didn't get either visibly upset or get up and leave the service. Like, it's just such an incendiary issue here. Like, bringing that up just puts a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, and I've seen that happen to the best of them. I saw that happen at our university here with Nancy Piercy. It's like my friend Alex just put in our YouTube channel that, Nancy Piercy is awesome. Here, I'll just show it to everybody. There we go. Professor Nancy Piercy is awesome. Yes. And she's right. I mean, she's one of the sweetest people you'll ever meet. And especially about this issue, it's very personal for her. She's had a lot of close personal relationships where she's had to really think about this a lot. And I go to Kenya and start talking about this, and it's almost like over there the students were just totally different. They're just like, feed us more. Like, can you come back and talk about this? Or I had a girl walk up to me in a very small group. I talked to a very small group. I think it was at AIU, at African International University. And she comes up and, like, after, and she was like, you realize I was having homosexual temptations before I came to this? I was a bisexual. And she's like telling me her whole life story. She's like, I was a bisexual for so long, and then last year I converted to Christianity, and your talk has just totally, like, I thought that I was still lost, and I was still like, but your talk has given me so much clarity this evening. You have no idea what this has done for me personally. I'm like,
praise the Lord.
I can't think of a time that ever happened to me here in the United States. And where a kid was just so blessed. Just by that truth that that the Christianity and homosexuality don't go together. There will be people who maybe watch this broadcast, and there are people right now saying, like, praising God for these truths, but there will also be people. I've never put a broadcast up about LGBT issues that has just got some sort of negative comments or something. It's just crazy, the different. It's almost like it's like I was saying earlier. and I've just been thinking about this a sec. I'll run this by you. One of the things that makes me so passionate about global apologetics ministry is that in global apologetics ministry, it seems like all of these ideas are so fresh and so new in things. It's not had the cultural popularity yet, and it's not been muddied up by a lot of fundamentalist apologetics either, like we've had in America. Some people have used apologetics to almost divide churches. I'm finding out and stuff, and yeah, I never knew about that until I started studying it. There's a lot of baggage when you say the word apologetics in the United States. In other words, but over in Africa and these other places, it's almost like fresh and new, and it's like you guys have the
Yes.
opportunity to lay a really good foundation there. And I've said in the last couple of weeks, it just kind of hit me. It's almost like in drug recovery, you have people that go to rehab, you know, and then you
Mhm.
have people that never do drugs because there was things put in, like guardrails put in their life that prevented them from ever doing it in the first place. And I feel like
Mhm.
in the West, we are in, like, it's almost like doing a drug rehab ministry. Like the worldviews are so entrenched that we have to bring people out of those worldviews in order to get them grounded safely in their faith. In other parts of the world, in the global South, it's more like we're stopping the ideas from ever taking root in the first place. And it's like we have this opportunity to get ahead of the curve, you know. It's like the
Mhm.
homosexuality issue is a brand new 2-year-old issue in Kenya. Gosh, in America, that's been going on since the 1970s. I mean, you know, really
I
1960s.
think what has been happening around is that the issue has been very silent. I think it's the yeast. I would liken it to the yeast that Jesus Christ is talking about in some of his parables. By the time you realize, like right now, people have realized that this thing is it's massive. I've got an opportunity to speak to grade 8 children. They are 12, 13-year olds on the same subject, and you'll be surprised the kind of questions they are bringing up. So you wonder, where have they learned these things from? Mainstream media, and it's like the media has normalized it to such an extent that to them they don't have a problem with it, and that's where the issue comes in. So we need to give a response. And the beautiful thing is that we know the West gives us an example, and your experience in the West, borrowing from what you've shared, and your personal experience, I mean, in ministry, the studies. When we bring it to us, then it gives us a foundation upon which we can stand and move forward. Those questions will always come. Yesterday, around the same hour, we are having a conversation with the Sales Lives Institute small group, and one of my buddies shared an experience he's been having with a friend in Nairobi, and his friend was like, "I think that is love. God is love, and we need to express love the way God is." But according to him, that love has been shaped by a certain authority who is God, who has standards. So what has happened? What has happened to this friend of his from Nairobi? It's like, hey, they have removed God from the equation. So love is love. And when you stand on a podium to start engaging those issues, then you remember the Emmaus experience, when Scripture says, and Jesus, in a way, Jesus helped them to realize what they were talking about, what they were discussing. I think that is the Emmaus effect. They start realizing, we are on the wrong path. We are certainly on the wrong path. Now, the problem is that these things are almost everywhere. So somebody starts asking, how? So does it mean we stop watching movies? Does it mean we stop listening to music? Does it mean we delete TikTok accounts from our phones? Does it mean we stop watching some reels that are always there on our Facebook platforms? What do we do? Recently, I had an opportunity to speak at one of the universities around here on the subject of postmodernism. And actually, it was hinging towards social media. And that was one of the main issues that we are supposed to tackle,
Yeah.
because we are realizing that there is a problem. So, how do we respond? I pointed them to scriptures. We better be grounded. Because
Yeah.
if you are grounded, then you'll be able to discern. But we cannot fight these things on our own. It's by grounding, and that's where discipleship comes in. Apologetics help us to deal with unresolved questions, and as you deal with those unresolved questions, you are able to get the right footing. You are able to take a stand based on fact, that is based on the word of God. And that's where I think we personally, uh, I think when I get an invite to speak about sexuality, I'm usually, of course, I normally ask the person making the invite, and I point it out to them that this is one of the most challenging subjects I ever
Yeah.
engage.
Absolutely.
It's challenging because people have different experiences.
Yeah.
The other issue has been families have disintegrated, and people are having all manner of experiences and baggage. So when you're talking about sexuality, I think the safest place to start it has always been, what does the Bible say?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, whenever I was in Kenya, you were talking about these different experiences and things, and like how homosexuality can look so different. Boy, I am so glad that that little, what was that little place called there that we were at? There's some sort of little like market area, like food.
Kilimani, I think it was Kilimani. I can't remember
Yeah,
the
Kikimani.
exact
That's
spot.
yeah. So across
Kilimani, yes.
Kilimani, I think that's right, Kilimani. But it was just right around the corner from my accommodation there at that Nazarene guest house. But I noticed that there were a lot of young people hanging out in this second story. Like, I'm reluctant to call it a bar. It looked like a sports bar or something. But it had pool tables. It was really nice, lit up, open air. A lot of young people up there, and so I was over there at the chicken wing place, which shut down. By the way, can you believe that place shut down? One of the workers contacted me on WhatsApp the other day and said it closed. I was like, oh, that stinks. Anyway, it's a good little place. But yeah, I was walking out of there and I was like, I'm just gonna go up there and see what all this is about. It looked like almost all like 20-year-old Kenyans hanging out in this place. And man, I was there till like 2 o'clock in the morning talking to some of these people, and they had like 3 or 4 people sitting around me, had the waitress in the conversation, and every one of them I would ask all the same question, like, how do you feel about what the Supreme Court decision this past February with the homosexuality and human rights stuff that happened? And they would all say the same basic answer. They would say, well, Hakuna Matata, whatever happens, as long as it doesn't bother me, whatever somebody wants to do, and that's how I'm telling the truth about this, because that's exactly what somebody in Kenya would say. It's like, well, Hakuna Matata, man. At least somebody from Nairobi, and the guy in Mombasa is not going to say Hakuna Matata about that. But, all these young people were saying, well, just Hakuna Matata, I'm not worried about it. It's as long as it doesn't affect me. It's whatever floats their boat. It's the way we'd say it in America. And then I would follow up with another question and say, well, like, what about like you said a minute ago, there's strong family structure in Kenya. You don't want to see that disintegrate. I said, are you afraid that's going to disintegrate? Man, the responses, like, we are just now seeing this thing called polyamory here in the United States, where you'll have like a family that has 2 husbands or 2 wives or something like that, and that's basically what they were describing. They didn't use the word polyamory, but they were like, well, the way homosexuality typically looks in Kenya regarding the family is that a man will marry a woman, and it would be an arranged marriage. They would pay the dowry and everything, and they would say, part of this arrangement's going to be I'm gay and I have this boyfriend, and the boyfriend's going to be part of the family, and he's just going to be my friend, but I love him, so I'm going to bring him into the family. But we'll still have kids together, and I'll still keep you up and things. And it looked like it was maybe an upper middle class to like wealthy kind of situation. That's the only way I could conceive that it would even work out. But like, so the marriage was based around this homosexual relationship being the actual marriage, if you will, and then the woman was there just to produce children and clean the house or something. I don't know, but man, I just couldn't imagine how that one would make the woman feel. But worse than that, what kind of family is that child being raised up in? And then secondly, they said that along with that, there was a lot of grooming and all this other stuff of like young men going into the business world and things like that. And they would say that like sexual favors and stuff. And I was like, I don't want to be crude about this, but I'm like, gosh, like, so in some ways it's actually embedded into the culture, but it's not like a cultural phenomenon, if you will. It's like, it's not something anybody talked about, which is not, that's the big difference between America and a lot of foreign countries that I've traveled to, is that Americans just talk about everything. But, there's just some things you don't talk about in East Africa, and the bedroom's one of them, and it's like, so this has been going on, and it's like everybody knows it's going on, but it's not been politicized yet. So only here lately has it been politicized, and then when things get politicized, they get polarized. And so as soon as it was politicized, it was like all these other NGOs, these non-government organizations, they were just foaming at the mouth, ready to fly over there and set up shop and start attacking you guys. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, it was like overnight. It wasn't just Kenya either. It was, they tried to do it in Uganda, and it failed. It failed, and the Ugandan president became everybody's hero. But like, to me, he wasn't a Christian hero. I mean, he was not the kind of standard you would want to be, just like throwing homosexuals in jail for life and all this other stuff, and everybody was cheering him on. It's like, well, wait a minute, that can't be the answer either. Like, you've got to be able to reach people. So yeah, like you said, like I had a presentation or two ready to go, and I didn't have to change all of it, but I changed maybe a quarter of each presentation that night after I got home. I was up real late till early in the morning. It's like, I got to give this lecture, so I need to, I'll just sleep in tomorrow because I've got work to do, and I fired up the hotspot and got to work on, on revising my presentations, because it was like, there's obviously a cultural dynamic going on here that we're not used to in the United States.
Yeah. It's actually, I love the fact that you've pointed out the cultural dynamic aspect. In Africa, people don't talk about bedroom affairs, sexuality. It has been a no-no for quite a while. And because of that, I think the enemy has taken a foothold, even in churches. People have not been discussing this issue. And I think it's a high time we intensify. Dr. Mureithi, Kevin, invited me to do a talk on sexual revolution, I think sometime last year at All Saints Cathedral, I think St. Andrews, I think, in Nairobi. And as I was preparing, I realized that this is a heavy subject. And what happens is, when you're talking about those issues, people go quiet. And by going quiet and silent, what is happening is that they are joining the dots. What they have been saying, they are joining the dots. There are those who feel, no, you are encroaching on their spaces, and they leave. There are those who will say, oh, I think I need to take this road because it's going to bring deliverance in my space and my life.
Yeah.
So the reality on the ground around here is that people are now coming to the reality. It's dawning on them that this thing is here with us. And when it gets into the political space, the next thing that is going to happen is that it's going to get into the constitution. The good thing about the Kenyan constitution is that it acknowledges the man and woman aspect when it comes to marriage. But the trend, I think we better stay prayed up, and we need to be quite equipped because we need to be ahead of the game. Burying our heads in the sand is going to expose it's going to expose us, and we are going to have more people falling off the way.
Yeah.
The fear is that even in our churches, I have a friend, and one of his concerns was that he had been approached by somebody who's struggling with homosexuality, and he's like, who do I go to? And attending a Christian men's meeting from our local church, we did a baseline survey. It was like 100 men, and those issues were surfacing. We were like, oh my good Lord, the men who turned up for that meeting were born again, those whom you can call serious believers. And they were surfacing within their midst. So what happens to the other nominal Christians who attend church for the same?
So when you mean that those problems were surfacing, did you mean like those men who were claiming to be born? They're born again, but they're
people who had
struggling with
interacted.
Oh,
Yes.
struggling with homosexuality.
Yes. We didn't ask questions. It was just a baseline. Hey, people wrote their responses on papers without having to put their names on those papers. And those issues, I think it was a shock on us. It was a major shock on us. And most of these guys are fathers and they are husbands. So what kind of children?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Professing to be born again, going to church.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just
So we need to be. I think we just need to be very strategic and intentional. And apologetics gives us that latitude. We also need to be courageous.
Yeah.
You just need to be courageous and rise up and speak about it. Otherwise, it's going to hit you hard.
When you were talking about strategic, like how to so that gets back to you're talking about the Constitution. There could be changed. Well, then that makes me ask the question: who's going to change the Constitution? The answer to that's pretty obvious. It's going to be politicians, representatives. I'm assuming you guys have probably a parliamentary government, considering it used to be a British colony and things like that. You probably have parliament and things like that.
Yeah.
Representative government.
Yeah.
And so those are the people that will change that. Well, what kind of people are running for office? I would say the majority of them, if not 90%, or the vast majority of them, are probably college educated people. I would say probably have a degree from somewhere, probably a degree. I would say in one of three places, either Kenya, United Kingdom, or America. I would say are the people that are in politics there. And then lastly, how are you going to reach them? Well, ministry like Ratio Christi, because the kind of people that are going to, we've even seen this in the last 4 years at Houston Christian University. We've been here long enough to see we've seen people graduate. Some of them graduated early. And of our students, we've got people that are going into the medical fields. We've got people that are going into philosophy fields to be professors. You have people going into theology fields. But we have a student right now that's in Washington, D.C. With an internship, and his plan is to go into politics. So it's like apologetics reaches those kinds of people. And if we're not doing apologetics ministry, and I would make an argument specifically cultural apologetics ministry, to talk about the hard stuff that's going on in our culture and not just be polemicists about it, but also give answers as to how to create good healthy Christian culture that doesn't compromise, but is also very strategic and tactful, and can actually like draw people in and make the faith attractive almost. I mean, we've without compromising, that takes a lot of, like you said, strategy, but really it's as simple as people object to Christianity for some reason, and
Yeah.
by addressing that without getting angry, without telling them they're stupid or telling them just to go have faith and maybe one day you'll grow up and be a Christian or something like that, but actually, you know, or as Richard was talking about earlier, like this is not something, you know, I want to practice what I preach on this. Like, you know, Richard, the guy who's the Faithiest Atheist podcaster, I mean, he's lived in my home with me before. You know, he's stayed with me while he was in Houston and things, and you know, and I tend to try to go to places where Christianity probably is not there. You know, whether it be a mosque, a Buddhist temple, Hindu temple, could also be a there's a donut shop here that's famous, like a famous donut shop in a famous part of town in Houston, Texas, that is got homosexual owners or something, obviously, because it's got all kinds of gay stuff on the inside of it and things. And I've had people ask me, like, you go into a place like that? I'm like, well, yeah. Why wouldn't I go in? That's where Christians need to be going, is like going in there and saying, hey, and then making sure you walk away letting them know that you're a Christian, but you don't have to be insane about it either. You know, you just by simply saying, God bless you, or asking the person at the cash register, hey, do you you got anything you'd like me to be praying for or something like that? And I've seen just a simple question like that just open up a whole realm of just a whole conversation of before you know it, you know, just like the two Canadian guys when I was in the Bahamas this last week, suffering for the kingdom down there, just really suffering in the Bahamas, and we were on vacation with our two godchildren, and you know, and there were two guys, obviously had been drinking in the middle of the day, 11 or 12 o'clock in the day, and the restaurant that was on the little beach that we were at it had like just a little bar that everybody sat around. They ate, like one guy would be drinking beer, another person would be eating a hamburger. It's like just where everybody sat. And I sat down beside them and they started talking to me, and it ended up being like a 2.5 hour conversation. The guys are opening up to me and talking to me, and it's like, this isn't hard. This isn't like brain surgery. It's just plugging into a place where people need Jesus and being Jesus there. And to me, it's almost like we tend to make evangelism some sort of formula that we have to memorize. You know, like you know, I'm not bashing Ray Comfort, but that master's, and then they call it the master's plan of evangelism, as if this is how Jesus did it every time. You know, that's the connotation people get. But it's like, but what happened to just having a conversation? And like Lindsay Meadenwalt, she just wrote a new book called Bridge Building Apologetics. I just finished it. She's going to be on the podcast next week, and so I was studying that, and she's like, it's just as basic as just seeing where the conversation goes, and don't have an agenda when you go into your conversations. Just talk to people. The things that you love are going to come out. Well, I love Jesus, so that's just going to come out.
Yes.
Like, it's just who I am. Like, yeah. And I'm confident enough in my faith and confident enough about who I am in Christ. I'm not confident in me. I don't have self-confidence. I have Christ confidence. You know, if Jesus is controlling my life, then that conversation is going to go in a place where if they reject me because of my faith, I'm okay with that. But 9 times out of 10, people actually want to keep that conversation going if you just read the conversation well. And I think that's what we have to teach people how to do is hey, plug into these universities and just talk to people and be ready to have the conversation.
That's true. I think Apostle Paul gives us a very good example of how he went about those issues. I think when you look at Acts chapter 17, his conversations in Athens, you realize that he presented himself and spoke about what those people loved and liked and identified with. Right. And from that, he built a case. Francis Schaeffer's meetings. I think it's L'Arbre, his meetings. He opened his house and his space and invited people just to have coffee. And out of those conversations, you realize that people would open up and he would share what they needed to hear. And that brought a lot of helped grounding the university students at that particular place. So for me, I think the university is an important space that we cannot emphasize enough. Having a space and spots where people can come and just be themselves. And the person who's at the heart of those conversations is somebody who's grounded. That will give us a good opportunity to engage. That will give us a good opportunity to evangelize. Jesus Christ gives us a very interesting model. Asking questions. How are you? What do you like in this life? And then from that point, you build on, you start realizing that people start opening up, and you also share your approach. There was a day, I think this reminds me of an experience. We were doing street evangelism in a town northern of Nairobi, I think called Thika, and one I was in company of younger ladies who are also learning how to do this thing. They were wondering, how do you go about approaching, let's say, somebody who's selling some wares. I decided to buy a banana, and then I bought the banana, I got an opportunity. That was my door. We talked about the economy. When we talked about the economy, of course, you ended up pointing out there is one whose economy supersedes all these other economies. He owns a cattle on 1,000 hills. Tell me more about him. And one thing led to the other, and we ended up evangelizing to that person. We didn't go there with a script.
Right.
There was no script.
We
There was a
often do that.
concern.
Yeah, there you go. That's
We
a good
can
way
do
of putting
that.
it.
There is a concern.
It really ma-
There's always something that is human beings have issues. I think and those are the issues that God, I think, has given us an opportunity to use. The state of the world as it is, the uncertainty. For instance, you are in a vehicle and then something happens, and then all of a sudden you're staring at death, or you're staring at an accident. That is an opportunity. Hey, you guys, that God is in control.
yeah.
And of course, at that particular time, they'll always be open to express themselves, and they'll be willing to listen to you. I've had those opportunities in the past, that God cares for us and He's so concerned about our affairs. He has given us this opportunity to see His power. And then, oh, tell us more about this. What do you believe in? What God have you been introduced to? So they start saying, and as they are sharing their experiences, you are able to speak into those experiences, and they start seeing Christ. There are those who are going to accept Jesus Christ at that particular time, but there are those who God has given you an opportunity to sow seeds. I think it's C.S. Lewis who say, smuggle doubt into their skepticism. So you smuggle that doubt into their skepticism. They go wondering, they go doubting what they were doubting in the first place, and that creates room to accept Christ. So from my experiences, I've realized, as you have said, that yes, there's a way that the scripts work, but if we stick to the script, then we'll miss it. We need to be dynamic, and the Holy Spirit is dynamic. Human beings are unique. We are as unique as 7 billion people. And the good thing, the other day I was praying, and I think the Lord led me to realize that there are 7 billion people on His planet, and they are His people. And He knows all of them, the issues they are going through. So as His vessel, He'll always tell me, this is the way. this is how you are going to approach this case. And when we are open to the Holy Spirit, He'll always direct us on how to engage them.
Amen. I really like there's two things that you said there that I really, really, really like that I want to add to my memory. And so repeating them will help that. And that one is, I never thought of it quite like that when you approach evangelism, you approach not with a script, but with a concern. And that's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a really good way, or I've heard it put maybe like, maybe in a more extreme sense that you shouldn't preach, or you shouldn't have, you shouldn't speak publicly to something that you don't have a burden for, and that's what we need is like, do you have a burden for the direction your country is going, and how are you going to fix that? Well, you got to get into the universities, and you got to change the direction. And how are you going to change direction? Well, you get people in touch with the Holy Spirit of truth that will ground them in truth. And then like it all comes back to the gospel. And then too, I like how you said, like C.S. Lewis said, that you should leave them doubting. How'd you put it? You should leave them doubting what they believe. If it's not true.
To doubt their doubts.
Yeah.
The skepticism for those who are skeptics.
I'm sure you're familiar with Greg Koukl's book Tactics. It's almost similar to what he said there.
Yeah.
Put a stone in their shoe. Put a
stone in their shoe. Yeah. Make them uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's what a lot of people. I think that Gen Z, they, at least in the West, they have an aversion to being uncomfortable. They read that as being harsh, judgmental, cruel, or something like that. And then Gen Alpha is even worse. I'm noticing that. Like it's like the idea of you challenging anything comes across to them as you're just being judgmental. And Christians can be a lot of things, but judgmental is not one of them. And it's like so learning how to navigate all that. And, the Holy Spirit always gives you teachable moments. And I've seen that over and over again.
That's true.
Oh, man. What time is it there in Kenya? I'm thinking, I was looking at my clock. You're coming up on 4 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning.
It's 3:45.
4:45. What are you doing up so late? Just registered with me. It's like, what are you doing? You're a trooper, man. How in the world? So let's hope some of you guys watching this take note of that. Like what are you doing at 4 o'clock in the morning? Sitting up talking about apologetics. Oh, it's so funny. Gosh, I should let you go to bed.
I think it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I think it's the concern, what you've said. And one thing I'd like to say, to add on to that, is that, Bill, as we grow in the Lord, He sheds light into spaces where He needs us to act. And think when He sheds light in those spaces, it's like a burden. He places a burden on our hearts. And that burden is so heavy such that you can't carry it on your own. You just have to go back to Him. And when you go back to Him, crying and praying to Him every day, challenges will become secondary affairs or secondary concerns. And the primary concern will be to execute that which He has called you. And that is where His grace and strength comes in. People start wondering, why are you up at 3:45 a.m. talking about...
With no plan. This is so dangerous. They're like, we're no
With
plan
no
at all.
Plan. It was an impromptu meeting. I mean, why?
Yeah.
Anyway,
that's how all of this came about today, by the way, guys. It started with a Facebook post and a few messages on WhatsApp and Messenger to people, and like, anybody want to hop on an impromptu conversation about global apologetics. Like, we just need to do more podcasts like this. People keep encouraging me. It's like, just get on there and talk to people. It's like, we don't have to do interviews every week, just have more like this. So This is cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's wonderful. Well, man, I actually have an appointment at 8 p.m. that I have to keep, which is, you probably need to go to bed. It's 4 o'clock in the morning over there. But is there any thoughts you want to leave us with, Aseka? Is there any prayer requests or anything that's just on your heart you'd want to share?
What I'd like to say is that God doesn't require an army. One man plus God is the army that his own desires. At times you might feel as if this work is too much, but with him, you can do many things. I believe I'm a firm believer of this school of thought that when you need an army of 1,000 people to get work done and only 2 people appear, the Holy Spirit will multiply your strength of those to meet the 1,000 people. So, Bill, you are an army, and I am an army, and let's keep on doing what we are doing. I think the prayer will be, let's pray for workers.
Amen.
Number one. Number two, clarity, to know how to engage. And number three, we thank God for the far that we've come. Imagine you are in the US, I'm in Africa. Whoa, who could have imagined? We thank God for this platform and opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God's doing something, man. I mean, I really believe that He's raising an army of workers. Already in Ratio Christi, we've got, just I have to reference the map. I mean, just in Canada and South Africa alone, I think we have 15 ministries. We've got maybe 4 or 5 rising up in Nigeria, 4 or 5 rising up in Kenya, possibly Cambodia, possibly 2 in Romania. I mean, they're just, the Lord's popping these things up, man. And
Praise the Lord.
just looking forward to seeing what kind of fruit comes out of all this. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how how your all's influence affects our students here at HCU, and how our students at HCU can eventually come alongside you guys and have that exchange, because we desperately need to get more students involved in cross-cultural mission work. And doing the Lord's work and reaching the nations. Because if we don't reach the nations, the secular ideologies that's ruining the West are going to go over there and ruin everything God's built over there.
Yeah.
And but it's good to see that the Holy Spirit is not willing to. He's always way more faithful than we are, and he's raising up workers. He's laying burdens on people's hearts. He's doing what God's he's doing in us. He's enabling us to do God's work across the nations. This is real exciting, man. And I get to meet cool people like you and sit and talk about this stuff. And so, yeah. And I think that what we're going to see as we build this global community of apologists, I really think that we're going to see that transaction where the intellectual Christian world becomes deeply intellectual as it is, or as deeply spiritual as it is deeply intellectual. And as God continues to raise up people like that, I've often said, Jesus was the greatest man ever lived. And his intellectual prowess was noticed by the scholars at the age of 13. You had the Apostle Paul, who was deeply spiritual, but also deeply intellectual, both in Greek work, in the works of the Greeks in Tarsus, and under Gamaliel in Jerusalem. You fast forward a little bit, Justin Martyr, who had a school of theologians before he was martyred. He was a former Greek philosopher and converted to Christianity. You think of, so you just keep on going. I'm not going to give a biography of all these guys, but what does Augustine, Thomas Aquinas, Anselm, Thomas à Kempis, Francois Fenelon, Martin Luther, John Calvin, Jonathan Edwards, John Wesley. What do all these people have in common? Two things. They really loved Jesus. They were deeply spiritual people, but they were also highly educated people too. And if you think about all those people, they changed the way the culture operated. And I think we're seeing that now, is that God is raising up people that are in the kind of world that we exist in, that really value education, value being grounded in the right ideas, but also value praying for God's help when we go out and do things and complete the Great Commission and spread the kingdom. I really think God's going to raise up a global community of people like that are just going to change the way the world thinks all over again. And if that doesn't happen in the next 15 to 20 years, I would be real shocked, because it seems like that there's just a wave of that going on across the globe. That's what I'm seeing anyway. So glad to be part of Team Jesus, man, and glad to have brothers like you.
Amen.
All the way in East Africa.
Amen.
All right. Well, go to bed. It's good grief's 4:00 in the morning. What are you doing? Gosh. But I know you stay up. You stay up to do training and stuff. So, all right, man.
Yeah.
Well, God bless you, Seika. I'll see you soon, and just keep us in prayer, man. In the meantime.
God bless you, sir. Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye-bye. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us this long. Man, we've been at it. We're coming up on, I was looking at the ticker. It's like 3:00 in the morning, or I'm sorry, not 3:00. My brain is mush right now. Obviously, it's been at this 3 hours and 1 minute. So you can catch the whole thing on whatever you're watching this on. But yeah, so thank you guys. Maybe some of you, I can't know for sure, but maybe somebody hung out the whole time. And if you do, if you did, you deserve the first t-shirt we ever produced for the Truth Conversation. But I appreciate it. You know, of course, like and subscribe, follow us for more content like this. We're going to continue to try to be a blessing. I hope this has been a blessing for people, and I hope you've enjoyed listening to some of these guys. Special shout out to my buddy Richard, the Faithiest Atheist, and of course Tyson James with Sound Faith Consulting and Reasonable Faith. He's the chapter director, or the director of global chapters for Reasonable Faith. It's a mouthful. And then, of course, Seika with the C.S. Lewis Institute and Ratio Christi over in Kenya. And yeah, thank you for those that are sticking around and watching. And you know, reach out if you need anything. Reach out to me. Shoot me a message. You know, we'll pray for you. We'll do what we can, and you know, looking forward to seeing what God does next. So keep us in prayers. We're in this season right now of getting ready to do some traveling overseas, in a season to raise additional support for all of our new missionary work that we'll be doing, and probably most importantly, bringing my wife on board full time as my field assistant, and putting her administrative skills to work as we manage a global ministry with Ratio Christi. And so if you have any, if you're interested in coming alongside us with that, please do reach out. I'd love to talk to you more about it and become your friend in the process. So God bless you guys. Thank you for reaching out. Thank you for all your thoughtful insights and your conversation. And so be looking forward to next week. We'll be on Wednesday interviewing Lindsay Miedenwalt, talking about her book, Bridge Building Apologetics. And in a couple weeks, we'll have Mike Lycona talking about his new work, Jesus Contradicted. So God bless you guys. We'll see you next time. This has been Bill Scott with the Truth Conversation. We'll see you next time.